Lunar calendar December 12th. 4:44 p.m. Yangqing Bus Terminal. Cloudy, feels like 16 degrees Celsius. Qinglai. 135 yuan per person, anyone going to Qinglai's. Power bank. Shunfeng, and 80 yuan a night with air conditioning and water heater. Tea eggs 2 yuan each. At the entrance of the provincial bus terminal, various hawkers stood along both sides of the access road, holding paper advertisements or playing looped recordings on loudspeakers to attract passersby. In the past decade, high-speed rail stations had sprung up across every corner of the city, and private cars had gradually become common. Fewer and fewer people were willing to take long-distance buses except during holidays, and for those passengers accustomed to this mode of transport, who still chose the vehicles that carried their era's memories. Qinglai, can I have 120? A voice with a slight dialect came. The bus ticket seller turned around and saw a young man in his late 20s, about 1.78 meters tall, with a crew cut. He wore faded jeans and a black leather jacket, and carried a black leather briefcase in his hand. At first glance, he looked like a freshly released talent after more than a decade of cultivation. The ticket seller's heart pounded. Leather jacket and briefcase. More than a decade ago, many robbers posing as passengers dressed exactly like this. Catching a glimpse of the burlap sack and red plastic bucket behind the young man, the ticket seller relaxed slightly, roughly guessing that, like many others, he was a migrant worker heading home 10 days before the new year, deliberately avoiding the spring festival rush. Okay, you know the rules. The young man nodded slightly. Then he picked up the stuffed burlap sack and walked toward the bus exit. The so-called rules meant not buying a ticket at the station, but waiting at the road for the bus to come out, then boarding and paying the conductor. Another year has passed. Rich or poor go home for the new year. The young man's name was Wanli. In the second year of high school, his parents died in a car accident, leaving only a 2-story rural self-built house and tens of thousands in savings. He spent half the inheritance on funeral arrangements, then dropped out of school and went south, moving between factories in Shuncheng and Yangqing over the years. Limited by age, the first 2 years were extremely tough. He was often docked pay by middlemen for various reasons, barely saving any money. It wasn't until he came of age and gained some experience that he could save 2,000 to 3,000 a year, or a bit over 4,000 in good times. Nearly a decade had passed in a blink. Now, with savings of over 2,000, Wanli planned to return to his rural hometown, buy a small truck, and sell goods to his neighbors in the mountains, becoming a mobile convenience store. Driving the small truck to make a living while enjoying the natural scenery. Once settled, he would raise 2 native dogs for companionship. That kind of life would satisfy him. Beep beep. A sharp horn sounded. By the roadside was an azure blue air-conditioned bus. The ticket seller, carrying a worn small shoulder bag, came down and opened the side luggage compartment, signaling Wanli to quickly put his burlap sack, plastic bucket, and other odds and ends inside. This place didn't allow parking. Quite a lot of passengers. Wanli was a bit surprised. The bus had 2.5 compartments for luggage. One compartment was almost fully packed, another half full. The spring festival rush hadn't started, yet shouldn't there be plenty of high-speed rail tickets? He had chosen the bus because he was carrying pots and pans that were inconvenient for security checks. Hi, there are about a dozen college students who want to experience life, saying they might not be able to ride long-distance buses in a few years, so they're trying it out before they're completely phased out. And 2 others accompanying family members for medical treatment in Yangqing. The ticket seller's tone carried a touch of melancholy. The wheel of time rolled forward, and every grain of dust that fell on an individual was a mountain. Those products that couldn't keep up with the times were destined to be abandoned. Medical treatment. Wanli was slightly puzzled, but he didn't ask further and busied himself with the luggage. The 2 of them each carried some items, and in half a minute they had placed the pots, pans, and other luggage into the compartment. The fare. Wanli pulled out the 120 yuan he had prepared and handed it to the seller. The seller took the money, raised a hand to signal the driver, then walked back to the terminal, not boarding the bus. Wanli carried his black leather briefcase and boarded the bus to find an empty seat. As soon as he boarded, he saw a dozen college students in short sleeves gathered in the back seats, both boys and girls very lively. In the front sat a pale-faced woman, and next to her a middle-aged man with black-rimmed glasses was peeling a tea egg for her. The remaining dozen or so passengers occupied scattered seats. The 52-seat bus had a few empty seats left. Cough, cough, cough. Several coughs rose and fell inside the bus. There was more than one sick passenger. A quick glance revealed 3 or 4 people with colds. Among them, the woman in the front row was the most severe, coughing incessantly. When she coughed, veins appeared on. Those veins were especially conspicuous on her pallid face, writhing like earthworms with each cough, making her look quite gruesome. Strangely, despite coughing so violently, the woman's expression remained unchanged. The middle-aged man next to her seemed long accustomed to it. He turned a blind eye, eating the tea egg the woman didn't want. Sit down, the bus driver urged impatiently. Wanli withdrew his gaze and walked toward an empty window seat in the back. Buzz. The bus started and slowly left the terminal. After passing through more than a dozen long traffic lights, they finally entered the highway. The tall buildings on both sides of the highway gradually became sparse, and the noise inside the bus faded. The college students in the back either listened to music or watched videos with earphones not making much noise. The woman's cough in the front grew softer until the man next to her finished his tea egg and dozed off, gradually falling asleep. It was as if leaving the city of steel and concrete calmed people's emotions, and they were no longer restless. Beep. Wanli was jolted awake by a horn. He opened his eyes. Outside, a light rain was falling and the sky had completely darkened. The mountains on both sides were pitch black and silent, not a single glimmer of light visible. In the green belt in the middle of the road, sensor streetlights turned on one by one, repelling the darkness on both sides, but also revealing thick fog shrouding the highway ahead. The fog hung like a curtain, layer by layer, diminishing people's sight. At a distance of about 10 meters, things became indistinct. Such thick fog. The south was mountainous. Foggy nights in mountain forests were common. However, a dense fog with visibility less than 10 meters was unusual. This fog is really thick. Indeed, rarely seen, but it's a bit cold. This morning's news said a typhoon is making landfall, passing through the Guangxi and Guangdong regions, with heavy rain and Category 17 winds. In the middle of winter, heavy rain and strong winds naturally cause a temperature drop. Heavy rain and typhoon. Hiss, that sounds. And look at the fog outside. Doesn't it feel like the end of the world? You know, it kinda does. No way, hurry and get my blanket. I need to add a seal and cover myself completely. Your blanket is in the suitcase. Cough. Then borrow your overcoat. Not lending. A few other students, awakened by the horn, laughed and filmed the scene ahead with their phones. Their laughter mingled with faint coughs that drew no one's attention. Pitter-patter. Outside, the rain grew heavier. The cold wind carried raindrops beating against everything, raising splashes of water. Wanli wrapped his leather jacket tighter, curling up against the window to ward off the cold seeping in from somewhere. Rest stop ahead. Everyone get off to take a break. The driver glanced at the rearview mirror, his voice neither loud nor soft. Whether the passengers needed a break, he didn't know. He definitely needed one. 2 cans of Red Bull to stay alert. This sudden thick fog could easily cause accidents. As the driver, he naturally dared not let his guard down. He had to concentrate fully on the road ahead to handle any emergencies, which also made him feel exhausted after a short Malay Mountain service area. Ahead lay the highway and a cliff, behind a ravine dozens of meters deep, overgrown with shrubs and weeds. It was a third-class service area, utterly isolated, equipped only with basic facilities: refueling, water refill, a convenience store, dining, drinking water, and restrooms. We've arrived. The driver parked the bus steadily, turned on the interior lights, then stood up and said loudly, "Wake up, everyone, wake up. All of you get off for a half-hour break. Be back in 30 minutes. Don't miss the departure. Take your valuables with you." With that, the driver opened his umbrella and got off. He walked to a corner not far away, lit a cigarette, and waited for the passengers to descend. Whoosh! As soon as the door opened, wet, cold wind rushed in, eagerly hitting everyone's faces. The passengers instantly became more alert. They rustled as they put on their jackets, murmuring, "It was summer when we got on, but it's winter when we get off." The temperature difference between day and night in the mountains was substantial, but a shift of over 10 degrees was truly unexpected. Some college students in short sleeves shivered violently, too embarrassed to ask the driver to open the luggage compartment for their clothes. They braced themselves and dashed toward the service area to escape the cold wind. "No umbrella, but I'll take a hat." Wanli opened his briefcase, searching, producing a clattering sound. Soon he found a black baseball cap. He put on the baseball cap, pulled the brim low to shield from the wind, and stepped out with his briefcase. As soon as he reached the door, a strong gust of cold wind slipped through his collar, sending a chill down his spine. He shivered and quickened his pace. Before getting off, he unconsciously glanced back at the woman. She had woken up, her face still pale, but her coughing had lessened and the veins on her face no longer bulged. Her condition seemed to have improved. But the next second, thump. The woman stood up to leave, but whether she missed a step or was too weak, she fell straight forward, face down, hitting the floor with a dong sound as if striking something hard. "Sis. Honey." The 2 middle-aged men who were cleaning up food waste were startled. They hastily dropped what they were holding, crouched down, and helped the woman up. The bus seats were a small step higher than the aisle. The woman's forehead had hit that step and blood was gushing out. "I'm fine." The woman lifted her head, looking at her husband and brother. She calmly patted her clothes, her face devoid of any pain. As she raised her head, blood from her forehead flowed into her eyes, turning half her vision red. The woman subconsciously reached up to wipe her eyes. When her vision cleared and she saw the bright red blood on the back of her hand, she looked stunned, as if not understanding what had happened. "Sis, you're bleeding on your forehead." The dark-skinned man frantically opened his backpack, searched for tissues, and wiped the blood from her face. He was probably used to rough work. His movements were somewhat crude. Occasionally, he would touch the wound where the skin had split open. But the woman's expression did not change at all, as if he were wiping away sweat, not blood flowing from her body. Her face was utterly calm. An expressionless face, a gruesome wound that would not stop bleeding. The combination of the two was quite eerie. Let's take her to the service area hall first. A soft, gentle voice came from the back of the bus. The service area has water and bandages. Take her there to clean the wound and treat it. See how serious it is. Decide whether to call an ambulance or wait until we arrive and take her to the hospital. Wanli looked up toward the voice. His line of sight was blocked. He could only see that the speaker was a girl about 1.7 meters tall, wearing a mask and a cold weather hat, her face obscured. Right, let's go to the service area to stop the bleeding. I'll carry Xiao, you pack up the stuff. Okay. The two men, hearing this, felt a plan take shape and moved with clear purpose. Wanli quickly walked to the driver's seat to make way. Soon the man with glasses carried the woman carefully down. Without bothering to open an umbrella, he dashed through the heavy rain toward the service area hall. Brother-in-law, wait, I'll hold the umbrella for you. The dark-skinned man held an umbrella with one hand, carrying 2 backpacks and a bag of trash with the other. Finding the trash bag bothersome, he casually tossed it toward a nearby trash can. Unfortunately, his aim was off, it missed, and the bag wasn't tied shut. Food scraps and blood-stained tissues scattered on the ground. So uncivilized, can't even walk 2 more steps. Stop complaining, they're in a hurry to tend to the injured. So cold. Walk faster, it'll be warm in the service area hall. Other passengers gradually got off the bus. Some couldn't help but comment on the dark-skinned man's littering, but soon unable to bear the wet cold, they pulled their jackets tighter and hurried toward the service area hall. The last to get off were the group of college students experiencing life. Wanli noticed that the girl who had spoken earlier was among them. She wore light blue jeans, showcasing her long, slender legs. Her upper body was clad in a loose-fitting white hoodie with black letters paired with a dark green jacket, giving her a somewhat androgynous look. But her figure was far from androgynous. The jacket's zipper couldn't even close. Very impressive. Unfortunately, she wore a mask, so her face wasn't visible. But with a figure like that, looks hardly mattered. Do you need a cover? The girl noticed Wanli had no umbrella and casually asked. As soon as she finished speaking, she regretted it a little. This young man's gaze was very oppressive. He pulled down the brim of his baseball cap, stood still, and stared at them, while holding a black briefcase like a lurking wolf picking out lambs. With his vintage attire, quite frightening. Thank you, but no need. Wanli was slightly surprised. He hadn't expected her to take the initiative to speak, and he declined firmly. Over the years, he had long developed the habit of not troubling others easily. Yusahan, hurry up, it's freezing. Several thinly dressed companions urged loudly. Xiaohao. Hearing someone call her full name, the girl rolled her eyes, while simultaneously feeling relieved. She turned and ran toward her companions. If you dare call me by my full name again, I swear I'll sleep with Xiaoling every night from now on. Han Jia, I was wrong. Begging won't help. Tonight I'm sleeping with Xiaoling. Tonight? Tonight doesn't matter. We don't even know if we can make it to Qinglai City. Then tomorrow night, I'm also sleeping with Xiaoling. Come on, Han Jia, tell me what you want to eat. I'll go buy it. Then Luosafen. Don't forget Xiaoling's share. Got it. Their voices faded into the distance. Wanli watched their retreating figures with great envy. Whenever he scrolled through videos of young couples online, he felt that college students had a wonderful campus life. Attending classes with their loved ones, walking on the sports field, traveling, doing whatever they liked without a care, without worrying about other factors. Too bad he would never experience university life in this lifetime. Keep working hard. I'll make sure my child gets to go to university. Wanli's gaze turned resolute. Then he lowered his head and charged into the rain, heading straight for the service area restroom. The driver took one last heavy drag of his cigarette, flicked the butt away, locked the door, and left. The parking lot gradually fell into silence. The blood-stained tissues on the ground were washed by the rain, faint traces of blood spreading around. A dark figure darted out from a shadowy corner, crawling straight toward the trash, lowering its head to gnaw on the food scraps stained with blood outside the bin. Dozens of bus passengers flooded in, and the service area hall instantly became much livelier. Wanli passed by a few eateries, curiously glancing at the prices, thinking he'd grab something hot to eat later. But he couldn't help exclaiming in surprise. A 12-ounce serving of snail noodles cost 18 yuan, and a fried egg was 5, totaling over 20. Who would be willing to buy that? Even with his savings of over 200,000 yuan, he couldn't afford. Here come the snail noodles. The voice by his ear made Wanli's expression stiffen slightly. Turning his head, he saw that man named Xiaohao carrying 2 steaming bowls of snail noodles, cheerfully handing them to 2 girls, the deluxe version with eggs. 1 fried egg and 1 deep-fried egg. Indeed, whether an item is expensive depends on the customer's wallet, not the merchant's pricing. In my next life, if I'm rich, I'll have snail noodles without the screws. Su Wanli thought bitterly. He loved, especially in winter, a bowl of spicy, numbing snail noodles was undoubtedly a delight. But 2 years ago, when he ordered a 10 yuan bowl of snail noodles at the factory cafeteria, there were actually screws in it, stainless steel ones, and it chipped his molar, which he still can't afford to fix. Absurd. After that, he never dared to eat there again. Time for the restroom. According to some experienced workers at the factory, holding in urine is bad for the kidneys. The kidneys store essence and hold qi, serving as the source of life's activities. When kidney essence is abundant, teeth are firm and hair is thick, eyes are bright. When kidneys are deficient, one suffers from soreness in the waist and knees, irritability, and difficulty concentrating. Just like those workers in their 30s who, as soon as they get paid, sneak into alleys, always listless and unable to pitch a tent in the morning. It's a blow to a man's virility. Squeal. Bang. Bang. Just as he reached the restroom door, a violent crash erupted from the highway outside. A car accident. Su Wanli recalled unpleasant memories, stepped back 2 paces, and looked up. The fog outside was thick, making it hard to see clearly from dozens of meters away. He walked to the entrance and ventured another 40 meters in the rain, finally making out a large truck with hazard lights flashing, overturned and blocking the road. Scattered cargo littered the ground, and a wheel weighing 60 to 70 kilograms had detached, rolling down the road into the service area parking lot. The wheel collided with several parked cars before coming to a stop. The entire parking lot erupted in honking. Holy crap! That truck has blocked the service area exit. Aish, my brand new Panamera. Call an ambulance quick. Haha, finally a hot topic. The tremendous commotion alerted everyone in the service area, and they all dropped what they were doing to rush out. Several middle-aged men with life experience, upon hearing the crash, didn't even grab umbrellas as they ran toward the truck to check on the driver. Timid women anxiously pulled out their phones to call emergency services, while a few young lads giggled, holding up their phones to film the truck, muttering words like Malay mountain car accident. What the hell are you filming? Help people. The bus driver cursed at the youngsters gawking at the scene, then hurried off to get warning signs. As a driver himself, he could empathize most deeply and understood the hardships of long-haul night driving. Seeing someone treat a car accident as a joke, he couldn't help but swear. Damn it, who does he think he is? Probably an orphan whose parents died in a car crash, looking for attention. The cursed youngsters shot back, looking quite displeased. They were self-media practitioners who, for any trending topic, regardless of its nature or their stance, adopted an attitude of leeching on if possible, enforcing it if not, dreaming of instant fame and financial freedom. Such behavior easily offends people, but they weren't afraid. So what if they offended someone? It just came down to who could type faster on the keyboard. It's not like anyone would come after them in real life, right? Hearing the words, parents died in a car crash, Su Wanli's face turned cold, and he glared at the youngster who had spoken. Due to his own parents' situation, he detested such remarks. What are you looking at? Damn. The youngster was already irritated. Seeing another clueless guy staring straight at him, he opened his mouth to curse, but noticing the other's height of nearly 1.8 meters, he wisely changed it to a silent curse, sullenly moving closer to his companions and shifting his gaze away. Among Southerners, a height of 1.8 meters was already considered tall. Moreover, Su Wanli, who tightened screws all year round, appeared slender but had solid muscles. Coupled with his almost refined attire, ordinary people wouldn't easily provoke him. Humph. Su Wanli snorted coldly. Too lazy to waste time with them, he ran to help at the overturned truck. The truck was on its side with the driver's seat facing down. The driver was conscious but lost balance with a broken arm, unable to unbuckle his seatbelt. Climb up and open the passenger door. No, the passenger door is deformed and won't open. Then break the window. We need tools to break the window. Seeing that the driver wasn't seriously injured, the men calmed down and discussed solutions in the rain. Some people who came to offer umbrellas also joined the discussion. Let me do it, Su Wanli said calmly. The others turned to look at him. Facing their gazes, he unhurriedly put down his handbag. Then he pulled out a pair of white work gloves from his leather jacket pocket, put them on to avoid cuts from glass, crouched down, unzipped the bag, and rummaged through the tools inside. Screwdrivers, wrenches, and other common tools were all there. Soon he found a suitable tool, a claw hammer. Move aside. Whooshed. Without Su Wanli needing to say a word, the people around him, seeing the claw hammer, instinctively stepped back a few meters. These days, who carries a claw hammer around? A watermelon knife or a baseball bat would have been more reassuring. But a claw hammer was different. The key was Su Wanli's skilled glove-wearing combined with his low-pulled cap, shiny leather jacket, and unique appearance, triggering some unpleasant memories in them. Most of them were in their 40s or 50s. In the old days, guys dressed like that were all men of few words and violent tempers, ready to crack heads over the slightest disagreement. It was truly a psychological shadow. Only a few young lads, oblivious, cheered loudly, displaying their natural innocence. Su Wanli didn't want to waste words explaining. Gripping the claw hammer, he nimbly climbed onto the top of the path. He shouted a warning to the driver, and after confirming the driver understood, he struck each of the four corners of the glass. Thud, 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 thud. After neatly breaking the window, Wanli jumped down, packed up his things, and left the rest to others. He was in a hurry to get back to the restroom. Before he had gone a few meters, another screech of brakes came from ahead. A black car reversing like a ghost, moving through the thick fog, headed straight for the steel guardrail. As luck would have it, the bus driver holding warning signs was about to climb over the guardrail and go 100 or 200 meters back to set up the signs. But his position was right in the car's path. Bang! The bus driver, unable to dodge, was sent flying several meters by the car. The unexpected scene left everyone stunned. Before they could recover, two faint lights gradually approached from the thick fog behind the highway. At that moment, only one thought remained in everyone's mind: it's over. Over half an hour later, the number of wrecked vehicles on the road had risen to over 20, and more than a dozen injured drivers and passengers were either lying or sitting in the service area hall. Fortunately, most of the accident victims were not severely injured and only required simple treatment. The most seriously injured was the bus driver, who had lost consciousness. He had been knocked off the road by a car, tumbling down a rocky cliff for over 10 meters. He suffered fractures in his ribs and left leg. A branch about 2 fingers thick impaled his abdomen, and he had numerous bruises and cuts. He urgently needed to be sent to a hospital. Why hasn't the ambulance arrived yet? There's an overturned truck ahead and dozens of cars blocking the road behind. In this situation, even a tow truck would be helpless, let alone an ambulance. Then what do? We can't just let him die. How about we find a few men to take turns carrying him to a place where we can hitch a ride? No, the outside temperature must be below freezing now, and it's raining. If he goes out in his current state, he might soon suffer from hypothermia and die even faster. This won't work. That won't work. What do you suggest? The truck lay across the road, blocking vehicles from both directions. The Malay Mountain service area was over 30 kilometers from the nearest city, a journey that would take a normal person hours on foot. Carrying the bus driver to the city would take even longer. Moreover, the weather outside posed another major problem. What if we try to stop a car on the opposite side, suggested a college student. His logic was simple. Since the road on this side was blocked, why not try the other side? There were no accidents. Don't be naive. Do you think anyone will stop in this weather? Exactly. Don't end up adding more casualties. Can't we just put out more warning signs further away? Sai, why don't you get it? A warning sign that can be seen is a warning sign. One that can't be seen is itself a hazard. In the extreme fog with visibility under 10 meters, drivers either pulled over to the emergency lane or relied on experience and instinct. Any slight mishandling could lead to another catastrophe. This was no longer a matter of how or how many warning signs to place. Look here. This woman is called Xiao Mei. An untimely voice rang out. The crowd fell silent, turning with slight displeasure toward the edge of the hall. There a few young men, working in self-media, sat with their legs crossed, smoking and scrolling through videos as if no one else was around. The volume was on full blast, completely disregarding those nearby. That's it. A young man named Xiao Hao slapped his thigh. He stood up excitedly and said, "We can ask for help online. Short video platforms spread information faster than the news. Let's browse nearby videos. Maybe we'll find someone who pulled over on the emergency lane ahead. If not, we can also ask online doctors for guidance on saving him." This idea offered a new direction. They had been fixated on official rescue, overlooking those drivers who, unable to continue through the thick fog, had stopped. Weren't they gathered at the service area precisely because the fog was too heavy and they needed a rest? Similarly, there might be people who had just left the service area, encountered the fog, and had to stop. Even if there were no parked cars ahead, they could still seek help from online doctors. Let's give it a try. Though unreliable, it was a last resort. Everyone pulled out their phones to edit videos or browse nearby posts. I found an official alert. Soon a woman raised her phone nervously, her voice trembling. The authorities just issued a red fog warning and announced a highway closure. Fearing disbelief, she turned her screen to the crowd and replayed the latest news bulletin. On the screen, a disheveled anchor, as if hastily awakened, read the script with his head down. We now interrupt with an announcement. Currently, extreme fog is affecting multiple regions. Local meteorological bureaus have issued red fog warnings. According to the International Meteorological Organization, this fog does not fall under any existing. Drivers must adhere to fog driving regulations, take preventive measures, choose a safe driving method based on conditions, and promptly find a safe place to park. Airports have suspended takeoffs and landings, highways are closed, and ferry services are halted. The 10-minute news broadcast went unheard. One phrase echoed in everyone's mind: the highway is closed. The entrance was sealed and the service area exit was blocked by the overturned truck. This meant they were trapped in the service area until the fog lifted. And there was more. The news mentioned alerts, not warnings, for multiple regions. This meant the fog wasn't limited to the highway, it covered other areas too. Holy shit. Before they could digest the news of the road closure, another college student cursed in disbelief. She pointed at her phone and exclaimed, "This is the international version of the short video app. It lets you see videos from people in different countries. Look, this video is from South Korea." The poster filmed downstairs from his apartment. He says he lives on the 5th floor, but the video is nothing but fog. You can't even see the ground floor. And this blogger is a high school girl from Japan. She uploaded a video of her school. This one is from the USA. Due to time zone differences, some videos showed daytime, others nighttime, dusk, or dawn. But every single one was filled with a vast expanse of white fog accompanied by incomprehensible, passionate voiceovers. Global fog. The crowd grew even quieter. At first they thought it was just heavy mountain fog at night and didn't think much of it. But now things seemed unusual. I don't get it. Wanli never troubled himself with such matters. With his limited education, he couldn't grasp such profound issues. He pushed through the people gathered around the bus driver and began searching his clothes for keys. Finding none in either trouser pocket, he unzipped the driver's jacket and checked the inner pockets. "Dude, is this appropriate?" Someone hesitated to speak up. Wanli looked up in confusion, noticing the strange expressions. One particularly muscular man's eyes lit up as if he had found a kindred spirit, his expression turning coy. Shuddering with disgust, Wanli pointed to his soaking wet clothes. "I need to go change into dry clothes." With that, he found the keys in the inner pocket. Ignoring everyone else, he headed toward where the bus was parked. Wanli had tried cold showers in winter before, but only now did he realize that being drenched by rain was a completely different experience. He was shivering uncontrollably from the cold. Let's focus on saving him first. The highway closure only applies to regular vehicles. Ambulances are not affected. A man wearing gold-rimmed glasses tried to calm the crowd. Fog forms when the air temperature drops to the dew point, causing water vapor to condense. It will dissipate when the temperature rises tomorrow, and rescue teams will arrive as quickly as possible. So there's no need to panic. His words were effective. Many calmed down. They could afford to wait one night. But a woman at the edge, pale as a sheet, remained oblivious, her face etched with a deathly pallor. She sat at the table, ignoring the delicious food before her. Her gaze was fixed on the carotid artery of the man sitting next to her. Blood vessels gradually reddened in her eyes, and her throat moved up and down several times. Outside the hall, the mist seemed to have grown thicker and the air colder. A thin layer of transparent ice had formed on the stone floor beneath the eaves, and a faint crunch sounded underfoot. Amid the rain falling from the sky, tiny ice pellets had begun to mix in, gradually forming freezing rain. Wanli hastily opened the bus luggage compartment and dragged his woven bag back inside. Yet after rummaging through the reddened white striped bag, he only managed to find 3 long-sleeved shirts and 1 black down jacket. Not a single pair of long underwear. Wanli was somewhat stunned. How had he survived winters before? Oh right. Previously in Yangqing and Xinjiang there had been no winter. That down jacket had been an impulse buy when he returned to Qinglai for the new year. Helpless, Wanli pulled all 3 long-sleeved shirts over his body and put on the down jacket to fend off the sub-zero cold outside. Still feeling it wasn't enough, he added 2 more pairs of cotton socks. Only when he felt warmth slowly returning to his body and limbs was he satisfied, and he zipped up his luggage bag. "Excuse me, could you wait a moment?" Before closing the luggage compartment, a soft, sweet voice came from behind. Turning around, he saw 2 girls huddled under a single umbrella. One was Yusahan, wearing a mask with a very attractive figure, and the other was her roommate and close friend Lin Xiaoling. It was Yusahan who had spoken. She had originally been a bit afraid of Wanli, but after seeing him brave the heavy rain to rescue the truck driver, her fear vanished, replaced by a glimmer of goodwill. This goodwill was not the romantic kind between a man and a woman. Rather, it was a subconscious admiration for someone who could step forward and do what she herself could not or dared not do. "We're also passengers on this bus," Yusahan volunteered. The clothes they wore were insufficient to withstand the sudden drop in temperature. Earlier, thinking the driver was unconscious and unable to open the luggage compartment, they had planned to endure until he woke up to get the keys. But Wanli had gone straight to find the keys. This delighted them, so they followed along. The small blue button in the bottom right corner of the dashboard. Wanli handed the keys to them and turned back to the service area restroom. Normally, when storing luggage at a bus station, the ticket clerk gives each passenger a numbered tag. Upon arrival, the driver opens the compartment and passengers claim their luggage by the tag to prevent theft or mix-ups. Given the special circumstances with no one knowing if the driver would wake up, they simply retrieve their luggage themselves. Returning to the hall, everyone was heads down, scrolling through their phones, occasionally exchanging a few words. The bus driver, lying sideways on the table, had been given a simple bandage for his external injuries by a few attentive women and covered with 2 thick coats, but was otherwise ignored. With the highway sealed off, even if someone were willing to risk carrying the driver to the toll station, hailing a vehicle to the city hospital would be nearly impossible. Most importantly, with the strong wind, heavy rain, and sub-zero temperatures, they themselves might not manage to walk dozens of kilometers, let alone carry a severely injured person. If the driver died en route, they might even be held accountable. Weighed down by such concerns, they tacitly chose to feign ignorance. "Moi, where am I?" The bus driver, lying on his side, opened his eyes groggily. He looked around blankly, taking nearly half a minute to recall being hit by a car. Just as he tried to sit up and check his body, a sharp scream pierced the air. A woman facing the driver shot to her feet, slammed her phone onto the table, and pointed at his pallid face, stammering, "He's awake. He's awake. Awake." At this, everyone turned to look at the driver. Seeing his drooping eyelids, they felt a silent sigh of relief. The guilt they had felt for not risking taking him to the hospital greatly diminished. They crowded around, asking with feigned concern, "Do you feel any discomfort? Want some water? Are you cold? Need another coat? Can you hear me?" The driver stared blankly at the enthusiastic crowd, as if not understanding what was happening. He remained silent for a long while. He looked up at the vaguely familiar faces around him and spoke weakly. "I'm afraid we won't be able to get off the highway tonight. Could you tell everyone about the overtime fee and ask them to split the cost?" "What?" The crowd exchanged bewildered glances, thinking they had misheard. "Overtime fee? You're talking about an overtime fee at a time like this? Staying overnight at a service area would cost at most a few hundred yuan. A few hundred is not nothing, but is it worth risking your life for? Besides, given the special circumstances outside, the fee might not even be necessary. Don't you feel any pain?" a slightly plump girl asked timidly. "Brother, you've got a branch as thick as a finger stuck in you. A full finger and a half wide. Thicker than her boyfriend's." Just looking at it was unbearable. "Pain?" The driver looked confused. Following everyone's gaze, he looked down and saw a tree branch with bits of flesh embedded in him. His pupils contracted sharply. A look of extreme terror crossed his pale face. He reached out to touch the branch, but was too afraid to move. He felt no pain at all. Yet the visual shock overwhelmed his psychological capacity. Besides the visible branch, he could clearly sense the strange sensation of it lodged inside him. This filled him with an abnormal fear and anxiety. "Don't move. Relax, you're fine. Lie still, don't move. Take deep breaths. Feeling pain is normal, just relax." Several men held the driver down, afraid he might die at any moment. The driver stared at them, his eyes full of terror. "Did you give me anesthesia?" "No," a young man blurted out. "There's no anesthetic in a service area." "Then, why don't I feel any pain at all?" The driver murmured, his eyes gradually losing focus. He would rather be in excruciating pain, even to the point of fainting, than feel nothing at all like a corpse. Perhaps this scene wasn't real, but a hallucination from his coma, a fabricated, non-existent world. That would explain everything. Yes, this can't be real, it can't be. The driver closed his eyes, muttering to himself. His face slowly calmed, and his breathing steadied. He fell asleep. The group exchanged puzzled looks. This scene was inexplicably eerie. Passing by, Wanli overheard the conversation and was reminded of the woman who had been his fellow passenger. Looking around the hall, the woman and her family had already left at some point. He felt a vague sense that something was off, but couldn't pinpoint it. Shaking his head, he quickened his pace to move away from the crowd. Wanli didn't like crowded places. Otherwise, he wouldn't have considered returning to his hometown in Qinglai to drive a truck and sell odds and ends in the mountains. "Oh, that feels good." After relieving himself, Wanli walked refreshed to the hot water dispenser. He opened his bag, pulled out the only container of Baisheng spicy beef noodles, and expertly tore open the film to prepare the seasonings. On such a freezing, bone-chilling cold day, without snail noodles, a steaming bowl of instant noodles would do nicely. Too bad there are no braised eggs or ham sausages. Carrying the bowl of noodles filled with hot water to the entrance, he found a sheltered table and sat down. Gazing at the pitch-black sky like a curtain, watching the raindrops falling beneath the streetlights, his thoughts began to scatter. Wanli didn't know what he was thinking about, nor did he need to know. He simply let time pass, his body and mind utterly relaxed. Moi. A figure appeared on the empty ground a few meters from the gas station. Wanli's vision refocused, and he stared toward the gas station, frowning slightly. He felt that the figure looked somewhat familiar, as if it were the woman who had been riding with them. Affected by the thick fog, he couldn't tell whether the figure was facing the service area or turned away from it. He could barely make out that she was exposed to the rain, without an umbrella, letting it soak her, standing utterly still, which seemed deeply unsettling. "Hello, could you hold on to these keys for us?" Just then, two young women approached. Yusahan had added a purple sweater under her beige wool coat, giving her a mature yet casual style. She slid the keys across the table. "Are you heading to Qinglai?" "Yes." Wanli withdrew his gaze and nodded in response. Looking again toward the gas station, the figure had vanished as if it had never appeared, silent and soundless. A trick of the eyes. Wanli suddenly felt a sense of unease. He removed the plastic fork from the lid, stirred the noodles a few times, and began to enjoy his meal. He wanted to finish quickly and return to the bus to wait quietly. And then, it's so cold outside, let's hurry up and leave. Lin Xiaoling tugged at her friend's arm, giving her a meaningful look. Though she spoke of the cold, she actually just wanted to avoid any interaction with Su Wanli. Su Wanli's act of braving the rain to rescue the truck driver seemed insignificant to her. She considered it merely his duty. Yu Sahan was not lacking in emotional intelligence. She quickly understood that her friend wanted to avoid Su Wanli, and also realized that Su Wanli's action of tearing open his noodles and eating directly was a deliberate way of keeping his distance from them. It was as if the two of them belonged to different worlds. Are you two coming back to the bus to sleep tonight? Without waiting for an answer, he picked up his phone to check the time, 11:11 p.m. If you're coming back, be here before midnight. The door will be locked after 12. Why do you have to bother us? So annoying. Lin Xiaoling muttered under her breath. She dragged her friend toward where the other students were gathered, joining the group to chat and complain while discussing how to spend the night. She seemed lively and cheerful. Still hungry, Su Wanli looked up, peering through the thick fog at the faint light from the gas station ahead, where a small convenience store offered another chance to buy a bowl of noodles to fill his stomach. But the moment the thought crossed his mind, he abandoned it. 2 packs of noodles were too much, but one wasn't enough. A frustrating dilemma. Most importantly, the figure he had seen earlier left him with a very bad feeling. Time to go back to sleep. Su Wanli cleaned up the trash from the table, grabbed the keys, and headed back to the lobby. His gaze swept around, landing on a few vaguely familiar faces, and he announced loudly, "Attention passengers on the Guangzhou Qinglai bus. If you want to come back to the bus for the night, now is the time. The lights will be off and the door locked after midnight." He repeated it several times before turning to walk toward where the bus was parked. The bus door wasn't automatic. To get in from outside, one needed to use the driver's seat button or a key. Su Wanli didn't like being constantly woken up during his sleep, so he gave them a heads up. Whether the passengers listened or not didn't matter to him. Whether they came back or not, or what time they returned, was their freedom. Whether he opened the door was his own choice. And sleep with the door open. Who would take responsibility if passengers' belongings were stolen? Wasn't it freezing cold? Locking the door was the simplest solution. Phew, at 11:59 p.m. Sitting in the driver's seat, Su Wanli felt his hands and feet grow icy. The wind outside seemed to have eyes sneaking into every gap at his cuffs and collar, maliciously cold. He stood up and scanned the bus. The college students in the back were curled up quietly. A few scattered passengers in the middle were resting with their eyes closed, but the woman with the bruised forehead and her family hadn't returned. They'll wait 2 more minutes. Su Wanli sat back down, found a comfortable position, and pulled out his phone to pick a few pre-sleep videos. He had a habit of watching a soothing video before bed to help him fall asleep faster. Ding, winter apocalypse, hoarding mouse space activated. Bind. What the hell? Su Wanli heard a strange sound and stood up again to look around. Inside the bus, there was only the faint sound of snoring. No one was speaking. Ding, winter apocalypse, hoarding mouse activated. Bind. The voice sounded again. This time, Su Wanli noticed the voice wasn't coming from his ears, but from within his mind. Bind, Su Wanli said tentatively. Winter apocalypse, hoarding mouse bound successfully. Welcome. Hoarding mouse. Su Wanli looked utterly bewildered. Though not highly educated, he understood the meaning of the word apocalypse. The movies 2012 and The Day After Tomorrow were 2 of his favorite sci-fi blockbusters. He rewatched The Day After Tomorrow every year or 2. But what was this hoarding mouse? Hoarding mouse space, store items to earn returns. The longer the storage, the higher the multiplier. Storage returns. Su Wanli's heart stirred. He silently pulled out the 500 yuan in cash from his pocket. Can this be stored? Detected 5 100 yuan bills. Return multiplier 1x per minute. Store. Storage successful. It's gone. Watching the bills vanish from his hand, Su Wanli's eyes widened. The next second, he opened his phone's calculator. 1 minute 1 times, 10 minutes 10 times, 1 hour. 1 hour would be 60 times, which meant 30,000 yuan. 30,000 yuan. After a year of hard work and frugal living, he barely saved that much. It was equivalent to a whole year's savings. How do I withdraw the bills? He couldn't even wait an hour. In less than 2 minutes, Su Wanli was already eager to take out the money and verify if it was real. If it was real, then if he withdrew his balance and stored it for a day or 2, wouldn't he achieve financial freedom? 1 minute of storage complete. Returning 5 100 yuan bills. As the voice faded, a stack of bills appeared in Su Wanli's hand. Including the 5 he had stored, there were now 10. All of them were 100 yuan notes. He randomly pulled out 1 bill, verified it as real, then randomly pulled out 2 more. They were genuine too. But after a moment of excitement, Su Wanli felt a sense of confusion. He didn't know how to spend the money. Eating snail noodles 3 times a day with fried eggs, and pig trotters still wouldn't exhaust his balance. Maybe buy a decent car or an apartment. Wait, no. It seemed a winter apocalypse was coming. In an apocalypse, paper money would lose its value. No matter how much he had, it would be useless. With that thought, Wanli felt a sudden clarity. Asking someone who had always been poor to figure out how to spend money was truly a challenge. Hoarding Mouse, what is this winter apocalypse you mentioned? The planet you inhabit is about to enter an extreme ice age, leading to species turnover and civilizational iteration. An ice age? Wanli was stunned. No wonder the temperature outside had plummeted so suddenly. A new ice age. He didn't know much about ice ages, only that the shortest could last millions of years and the longest billions. During such periods, the entire planet would be frozen and existing life would either go extinct or evolve into new cold-adapted species. Could those people who lost their sense of pain be connected to the ice age? Bang! A loud crash interrupted Wanli's thoughts, startling him. He turned to look outside. A staggering figure was repeatedly banging its head against the driver's side window. Open! Open the door! Thump, thump, thump. Outside stood a drunken man. A half-empty bottle of liquor dangled from his hand, his clothes soaked through by the rain, shivering as he clumsily knocked against the door and window. If left unattended, he would likely fall ill from the cold by morning. Wanli recognized this. The man's backpack was stuffed with several jeans of cucumbers, oranges, a large box of cold mixed pig ears, sauced beef, and some peanuts for drinking snacks. Throughout the journey, he kept drinking and eating, filling the entire bus with the smell of liquor and food. What a nuisance! Wanli shook his head in exasperation. He stood up ready to get off and drag the man in. Suddenly, a disheveled figure darted out from the thick fog behind the bus. Like a leopard hunting a lamb, that figure pounced on the drunkard, dragging him several meters away, pinning him to the ground, and tearing at him with its mouth. Oh! The searing pain instantly sobered the drunkard. Instinctively, he pushed against the woman on top of him, raising his right hand to fend off her bites. At the same time, he turned his head towards Wanli in the driver's seat, seeking help. But his throat was destroyed, rendering him voiceless, and a chunk of flesh had been torn from his face, revealing his gums, clenching and unclenching, drenched in blood. Vaguely, the white bone of his cheek could be seen. Humph. The sound of chewing raw flesh echoed. The drunkard's half-raised arm, cheek, and throat were all targets of the figure's savage bites. In less than 10 seconds, crimson blood stained the ground, spreading with the water into the surrounding low-lying areas, mingling with dust to form small puddles. Heh, heh. The drunkard spat bloody foam from his mouth, his throat emitting a gurgling sound. His carotid artery was torn open, blood rapidly draining from his body, and his right arm, losing all strength, fell limply. Shh. Before Wanli's mind could react, his fingers frantically pressed the door close button. He didn't know if it was safe to stay on the bus. Yet, having witnessed the drunkard's horrific fate, he couldn't muster the courage to flee. Hep! The faint sound of the bus door closing alerted the figure feasting. She whirled around, her dilated pupils fixed on the bus, her body poised to strike. Hey! This sight startled Wanli. He instinctively reached for his claw hammer. Before he could act, however, the figure clamped its mouth onto the drunkard's collarbone and dragged him into the depths of the dense fog, vanishing from sight. You stay calm. You must stay calm. It took several minutes for Wanli to regain his composure. He slumped back into his seat, breathing heavily. Still uneasy, he retrieved a wrench from his bag and wedged it against the door. Only after testing it multiple times to confirm it wouldn't open did he feel a sliver of safety. It was impossible not to be terrified after witnessing a living person being brutally murdered before his eyes. Moreover, the killer was the same woman who had shared the bus with them for hours. The one who had been coughing severely earlier, who had bumped her forehead when getting off, and who had shown no change in expression. Wanli couldn't understand. How could that woman's speed and strength be several times greater than the drunkard's, allowing her to slaughter him so overwhelmingly? If he had been the one outside, he probably wouldn't have had time to react either. That was the true source of his fear. The helplessness of facing a life-and-death threat without the ability to struggle filled him with deep despair. Call the police. Regaining some calm, Wanli pulled out his phone to dial emergency services. But no matter how many times he tried, the only response was a mechanical voice saying the line was busy. Busy tone. Could similar attacks be happening elsewhere? He opened a short video app and searched for keywords, but no related videos appeared. He couldn't tell if there were no attacks or if they were restricted from being uploaded. Why am I calling the police? The Great Ice Age is a global disaster. Service stations need help, and in densely populated areas the situation will only be worse. I need to figure out how to save myself. Wanli put down his phone and thought seriously. He couldn't pin his hopes on rescue. He had to prepare for all kinds of crises. Currently, aside from the dropping temperature, the woman who treated humans as prey was the greatest threat. Wanli carefully recalled the process of the drunkard's attack and the woman's eerie behavior of dragging away the corpse. He found it hard to associate her with the zombies in his memory. If not a zombie, then what was she? Since the drunkard's body had been dragged away, he couldn't verify whether the man would become infected. If he wasn't infected, then it would be manageable, just dealing with one monster, and he could come up with a foolproof plan. But if he was infected, then his situation would be dire. Given the speed and strength the woman had displayed, almost no one could escape from her grasp. First, gather food and observe for 2 days. Faced with the unknown, it was better to stay still than to act. Wanli decided to lie low for a while. Following his memory to the drunkard's seat, he found the man's backpack. Inside, only a few cucumbers remained. Hoarding like a squirrel storing food. Adopting the mindset that even a mosquito's leg is meat, he chose to store them. Ding detected 3 fresh cucumbers, double return in 3 hours. Storage complete. Watching the items vanish from his hand, Wanli breathed a slight sigh of relief. This small amount of food wasn't much, but it could quench thirst and stave off hunger, barely allowing him to survive a few more days. Should I tell them? He glanced back at the other passengers. Sahan was lying sideways in the last row, covered with an overcoat. Lin Xiaoling and Xiao Hao were sitting in the front seats, leaning against each other to rest. The others were also sleeping in their seats. Shielded by the rain and thick fog, they were completely unaware of the attack on the drunkard. Let's observe for now. The monster had dragged the body away, and the rain had washed away the bloodstains. Even if he told them, they might not believe him. Wanli didn't want to go through the trouble of doing thankless work. He chose a seat in the middle. This time he didn't sit by the window, but lay down next to the aisle. He decided not to sleep tonight, staying awake to see if that monster would come out to attack anyone else. The next day, just past 8 in the morning, Wanli was awakened by a gust of cold wind. Opening his eyes, he saw through the transparent window several energetic female college students taking photos outside. They posed in cute, sexy, and playful ways for their phone cameras, while another girl framed a shot near the bus door. Seeing the open door, Wanli's drowsiness vanished instantly. The image of the drunkard being attacked the night before was still vivid in his mind. The cheek missing a large chunk of flesh, the neck spurting blood, the broken arm. Just thinking about it was enough to chill one's heart and make one tremble with fear. At the bus steps, Lin Xiaoling, who was taking photos, caught a glimpse of Wanli charging at her with a claw hammer in hand, a fierce look on his face. She was so frightened that she collapsed onto the ground, her face pale and her speech stammering. What are you doing? What time did you open the door? Wanli kept his gaze alert on the outside, his left hand hovering over the door open-close button, ready to press it at any moment. Last night, he had been staring out the glass window the entire time. By around 3 in the morning, he was utterly exhausted, even more tired than working the night shift on the assembly line. He accidentally dozed off. When he opened his eyes again, a layer of white frost had formed on the leaves of several ornamental trees at the edge of the parking lot. The wild grass on the ground was also covered in thin ice. A few fashionably dressed university students ran under the trees, choosing suitable spots and angles, constantly taking photos to capture the moment. It seemed there was no danger. WWE got up a little after 6. Lin Xiaoling replied obediently. She had no choice but to be obedient. The gleaming stainless steel claw hammer held tightly was less than half a meter from her forehead, as if it might come crashing down at any second. 6 o'clock. Wanli frowned. He looked up at the bus digital display, 818. In over 2 hours, they hadn't been attacked. Weren't you attacked by strange people? No. Have you been outside the whole time? Yeah, we got up at 6, went to the service area restroom to wash up, came back to put away our towels, then went to the service area for breakfast. Got bored, so we came back to take pictures. Lin Xiaoling blurted out everything she had done that morning. Breakfast was soy milk and fried dough sticks, 16 yuan. Her boyfriend had a meat bun and congee, 21 yuan. Her best friend had brown sugar steamed buns and pumpkin congee, 15 yuan. She was very detailed. She was using a clumsy method to stall for time. That's not right. Wanli frowned. Last night, the drunkard had been attacked by the monster after staying outside for less than a minute. These people had lingered for at least an hour without anyone getting hurt, not even seeing the monster, and no one paid any attention to the bloodstains left on the ground. The bloodstains were easy to understand. Everyone knew that woman had been bleeding profusely from her forehead and had been taken to the service area, so it was normal to have blood on the ground. But what about that monster? Crowds. Daylight. Wanli thought of 2 possibilities, but he couldn't be sure. Still, this information wasn't important for now. At the dawn of the winter apocalypse, paper currency still held transactional value. Since no one had yet realized the importance of food and supplies, Wanli could get a head start, head to the service area to buy a batch of daily necessities and rely on the stash space's return function to lie low until a way to deal with the monsters appeared online. Sorry, I had a dream last night that the place was crawling with zombies, still a bit out of it. Did I scare you? Tell you what'll treat you to some soy milk to calm your nerves. With that, he tucked the claw hammer into his waistband, bent down to pull up Lin Xiaoling, who was still sitting on the ground, and as he passed a bewildered Sahan, he grabbed her too. Ignoring their reactions, Wanli dragged both of them by their clothes and strode quickly toward the service area convenience store. He was afraid of encountering that monster and didn't dare to go alone. Ding dong, welcome. As soon as he stepped into the convenience store, the automatic sensor chime rang. The prices in this convenience store were higher than those at the gas station one. But in these special times, he'd rather spend a bit more for peace of mind. Let me treat you to some coffee. Wanli grabbed over a dozen bottles of Starbucks from the fridge, paid, and stuffed them into Sahan's hands. Just as he was about to start his shopping, he suddenly thought he'd need company for the next few days and opened his mouth to speak. Oomph. Lin Xiaoling came to her senses. She stormed off in a huff to find her boyfriend and complain. Sahan nodded at Wanli before quickly following her best friend to prevent things from escalating. Time to get to work. Wanli was fine with that. He wasn't good with people. He grabbed a shopping basket from the checkout counter and headed straight for the shelves to pick out high-energy, high-calorie items. Things like chocolate bars, bucket-sized M&Ms, canned 8-treasure congee vacuum-packed chicken wings, and drumsticks. He took 2 of each as food sources to sustain life. For drinks, he bought functional beverages like coffee, Red Bull, Gatorade, and milk. He picked the most expensive bottled water. They even have toothpaste and toothbrushes. On the shelf selling charging cables and phone holders, there were a few toothbrushes and tubes of toothpaste. Without a second thought, he tossed them into the basket. Under normal travel time, they would have arrived in Qingshi City by a little after 5 in the morning, had breakfast, and gone their separate ways home. So he hadn't brought toothpaste or a toothbrush. Now this solved the hygiene problem perfectly. Why not buy just one of each item? Wanli paused. The return time for the stash space varied depending on the item. Paper currency doubled in a minute, cucumbers doubled in 3 hours, and the return time for other things was uncertain. Since he didn't know exactly what supplies he needed, why not buy a little bit of everything and test the stash space's return time while he was at it? One of everything. He set to work right away. Wanli walked to the front counter, put down the main food items he had grabbed earlier, picked up another empty shopping basket, and went along the shelves taking one of each item. When the basket was full, he returned to the counter, had the cashier scan the items, and then continued his sweep. The whole round took over 10 minutes. Holy crap. That's epic, bro. 2 young men with hunched shoulders walked into the convenience store, clicking their tongues in amazement. Buying all this stuff? That receipt's longer than my life. One of them, with an unsteady gait and wearing a denim jacket, picked up the receipt that stretched to the floor, looked it over, then casually put it down. He looked at Wanli and said in a cocky tone, "Bro, how about treating us to a smoke? You're buying so much you won't miss a pack or 2, right?" As he spoke, he pointed at the goods piled on the counter and made a smug guess. "You must be in self-media, right? Which platform? I'll tell my fans to give you a follow. Oh, by the way, my ID is Qingshi Fire Snake Bro, 60,000 followers. That's worth at least 2 packs of smokes, isn't it?" As he said this, he reached out and took 2 packs of cigarettes worth over 50 yuan each. The guy held up the 2 packs of cigarettes and tilted his head towards Wanli for the cashier to see. The meaning was obvious. The guy held up the 2 packs of cigarettes and tilted his head towards Wanli for the cashier to see. The smile on Fire Snake Brother's face instantly vanished, replaced by a dark scowl. He and his companions stepped forward, one on each side, surrounding Wanli, their eyes fixed on him, as if ready to throw down at the slightest provocation. Someone with less experience might have been easily intimidated. Unfortunately for them, Wanli was immune to this kind of act. The high turnover rate in the factory workshop meant everyone had a short fuse and didn't put up with anyone's attitude. These 2 wannabes were small time. Get lost. Wanli snapped without a hint of politeness. "FCKU. Fine, just wait." The lackey rolled up his sleeves, ready to throw down. But Fire Snake Bro noticed the claw hammer at Wanli's waist, grabbed his lackey, dropped the cigarettes. He hadn't even had a chance to warm up, and decisively walked away. "Hold on." Wanli called out to stop them. "What the hell do you want?" Fire Snake Brother's voice rose a few. He was a bit scared. This guy just wasn't normal. Who the hell walks around carrying a claw hammer? If he had a baseball bat or a machete, he wouldn't be so intimidated. Anyone who's been in fights knows that getting slashed a few times with a machete or hit with a baseball bat isn't likely to be fatal. But a claw hammer is different. One swing, and your head could be like a watermelon bursting open. Who wouldn't be scared of that? Relax. Wanli reached out and patted the guy's shoulder, a smile in his eyes. "I want to ask you for a favor." So he wasn't looking for trouble. Fire Snake Bro breathed a sigh of relief. "What favor?" "Help me carry some stuff. When we're done, I'll give you each a pack of cigarettes." "Deal, deal." The 2 young men agreed without hesitation. The stuff on the counter looked like a lot, but it wasn't heavy. The parking lot wasn't big either. A few trips would be a few hundred meters at most. Earning 2 packs of cigarettes for walking a few hundred meters was basically free money. "How much?" "Hello, that'll be 1,166 yuan and 50 fun." "Over 1,000. Wanli was quite surprised. He thought it would be a few thousand, but it was only just over 1,000. That meant he still had plenty of money left. He pointed at the cigarettes and alcohol behind the counter. "They'll take one of each type of cigarette and alcohol. 1 carton of each cigarette, 1 case of each type of alcohol, 1 case of each kind of drink, and more bottled water, 5 cases of that. Are you sure? The cashier's mouth fell slightly open. I'm sure. All right, please wait a moment. Having confirmed the customer's intent to purchase, the cashier turned around, opened the lower cabinets, and started pulling out carton after carton of cigarettes. Then she went into the back storage room and brought out cases of alcohol one by one. Besides the cigarettes, alcohol, and water, Su Wanli also bought one of each item on the counter. Things like gum, little umbrellas, and so on, taking one of everything. Since he had free labor, he might as well get everything in one go. Hello, the total is 52,111 yuan and 1 jiao. The cigarettes took up the bulk of the cost, around 25,000. 2 cases of Wulianya and 2 cases of Matai were over 20,000, and with the other odds and ends it came to over 52,000. He'll pay by card. Su Wanli's expression was complicated. It wasn't that he was heartbroken, but he wasn't used to spending money this way. Well, maybe he was a little heartbroken. A whole year's salary gone just like that. But it didn't matter. In a few days this money would just be a string of meaningless digits anyway. It was fulfilling its final purpose. A puff of breath escaped his lips as he stepped out of the service area hall, greeted by a cold, moisture-laden wind. The 2 young men, known as Fire Snake and his companion, were thinly clad. Shivering, they rubbed their hands together and blew on them for warmth, pulling their jackets tighter. Had it not been for the 2 packs of cigarettes keeping them going, they would have long retreated to the hall to chat with girls online. Bro, why are you buying so much stuff? This bottled water costs 10 bucks each, and you bought 5 cases. What are you planning to shower with it? Yeah, I have a thing about cleanliness. Can't sleep without a wash. Su Wanli made up the excuse on the spot. The 2 youths bought it. They knew someone with a severe cleanliness obsession, a guy who not only washed his hands after every bathroom trip, but also scrubbed his shoes and pants, leaving everything soaked. Anyone unaware might think he'd peed on himself. Damn, it's freezing. Let's get this done quick so we can head back to gaming. The 2 youths mustered their strength. But they were out of shape, each able to carry only 1 case of 24 bottles at a time, making their progress sluggish. What's with those people? Looks like they bought a ton of stuff. The fog will lift by afternoon. Why buy all that just to let it gather dust at home? True. I'm a bit hungry. Let's check out the convenience store for snacks. It was just past 8 in the morning. Many passengers had woken up in the hall. Drawn by Fire Snake's earlier shout, they noticed someone buying a mountain of goods and curiously gathered around to watch. Seeing Su Wanli grab a bit of everything only puzzled them further. Was he preparing gifts? But no one gives umbrellas as presents, do they? Probably not. Some chose not to dwell on it, treating it as mere entertainment. Others sensed something unusual and also headed to the convenience store to stock up on a few items. The indecisive ones decided to wait and watch how the fog developed by afternoon before making their move. Few cough. In the parking lot, Fire Snake and his companion leaned against the car door, panting heavily, their hands and cheeks red from the cold. After several trips back and forth, they nearly had their hunched cool guy posture straightened right out. Damn fine. Hard work pays off. Here your reward. Su Wanli glanced at the aisle stuffed to the brim, feeling a bit pleased. He had initially planned to offer cheap, white Red River cigarettes as payment, but swapped them for a carton of Red Double Happiness Soft Classic. Opening it, he took out 2 packs as compensation and handed them over. Unlike the managers at his factory, he kept his word. 2 packs it was. He never skimped a penny off his workers. Dude, are you kidding me? Fire Snake stared at the 2 packs of Double Happiness, his expression souring. These cost 13 bucks a pack, under 30 in total. They had braved the rain and wind, hauling cases of drinks and water back and forth multiple times. If not Huazi, at least Furong Wainwright. Who was he trying to fool with these cheap 10-buck smokes? Want them or not? Su Wanli didn't coddle him at all. Did he think money was easy? Hadn't he heard the saying, money is hard to earn and shit is hard to eat? In less than half an hour, Head made nearly 30 bucks, a rate of about 50 an hour. If that wasn't enough, what was he dreaming of? Fine. Fire Snake nodded bitterly, snatched the Double Happiness, and turned to leave. The lackey understood. This time Fire Snake was genuinely pissed. Once they got back to Qinglai, He'd definitely call a few dozen brothers to wait outside the bus station and teach Su Wanli a lesson He'd never forget. Just you wait till we're back in Qinglai. Heh. Su Wanli chuckled noncommittally. Back to Qinglai. They'd be lucky to survive the service area first. Still, he doubted the 2 youths would make it. They couldn't control their emotions, instead emotions controlled them. In a world without order, such people were nothing but cannon fodder destined for short lives. No attacks during the day. Su Wanli watched the 2 youths walk away. During the moving process, Fire Snake and his lackey hadn't always moved in sync. There were 2 or 3 instances where they were out of step, acting alone. A round trip took 3 to 4 minutes. In that time, that monster could have hunted them down several times over. They'll keep observing. Su Wanli withdrew his gaze. His life was at stake. He couldn't afford any carelessness. He closed the car door, checked the seats inside, and scanned the surrounding vehicles to ensure no one was watching before he began storing the food. Hoarding mouse store items. Scanning host's storable items. Scan complete storable items: wrench, claw, hammer, down, jacket, long sleeve, shirt, boxer briefs. Don't scan what I'm wearing. Scan the things I bought. Wanli was exasperated. Ding, storable items detected: 1 case of 8th generation Wuliangye triple return. In 3 days, 1 case of coconut milk, 8 treasure porridge double return. In 6 hours, 1 box of Durex double return. In 2 days, 1 pack of Red Bull double return. In 3 hours. Most food items have a return time of over 3 hours. Durex takes 2 days. What's that about? He tested each item one by one. For food from high-end Wuliangye and Maodai to peanuts and sunflower seeds, all required at least 3 hours. As for daily necessities, tissues, toothpaste, condoms, they range from 5 minutes to several days. The 2-day return on Durex particularly baffled him. No big deal. Store everything. I'll take things out when I need them. Wanli couldn't figure out the hoarding mouse's return logic and decided not to overthink it. He simply sorted the items by return time, intending to store them all in the hoarding mouse space and retrieve them as needed. No trouble. Store everything. Ding host can only store one type of item. Until the stored item is retrieved, no other items can be stored. Only one type. Wanli was dumbfounded. This, he hadn't known. After some inquiry, he learned that the stored item type was limited to one category, such as beverages, cigarettes, instant noodles, etc., categorized by type, and once retrieved items couldn't be stored again. The only silver lining was no limit on quantity. He could store as many as he had at once. What to store? Wanli stared at the array of goods torn. If he stored food, it wouldn't be convenient to take out, and once retrieved, he had no place to stash it, which would also draw attention. The key point was that head bought by the case. The food alone could last him 1 or 2 months. By keeping one of each item, he could rely on the hoarding mouse for returns. Food wasn't urgent, but the weather outside was getting colder and the service area had no clothes for sale. He'll store clothes first then. Wanli took off his jacket, then peeled off a long-sleeve undershirt and placed it on the seat before quickly putting his jacket back on. Then he pulled out the leather jacket, spare winter jeans, underwear, and cotton socks from his bag. Retrieve the cucumber. Store clothes. Storage complete. 6 fresh cucumbers returned. Ding, storable items detected: cheap clothing double return in 2 hours. Note: host may choose quality return tenfold. Starting point: a longer storage yields better quality clothes. Besides the 9 cucumbers, this was an unexpected bonus. Wanli smiled. Wearing 2 layers for warmth versus 1 layer with superior insulation. The choice was clear. Select quality return. Witnessing the autumn jacket on the seat vanish into thin air, Wanli couldn't help but marvel inwardly. Without wasting a moment, he began inspecting the rows of seats one by one. Found it. Soon Wanli stopped at a spot slightly behind the middle, the internal entrance to the luggage compartment. Inside the bus, there was a row of emergency seats allowing passengers to directly access the luggage hold for storing or retrieving their bags. Now, not daring to linger outside alone, he had no choice but to use this method to transfer the food piled in the aisle into the luggage compartment piece by piece. After over 10 minutes of struggling to fold down the seats, pulling open the iron hatch, and then hauling box after box, it took more than half an hour to finally store all the food inside the luggage compartment. Phew. Slightly weary, Wanli returned to the driver's seat to rest. He cracked open a can of Red Bull to replenish his energy and began pondering his next plan. The dense fog outside showed no sign of dissipating, and the temperature continued to drop. Drivers and passengers who had pulled over on the emergency lane would soon arrive one after another. As the number of people increased with no way to replenish food at the service area, a food crisis would erupt within days. But the most severe issue wasn't water or food. It was the monster lurking in the thick fog. If that creature wasn't dealt with, or if it possessed the ability to infect others, they would never be able to leave the service area safely. "Eshu the hell threw trash onto the hood of my Panamera," a clumsy voice rang out from outside. Wanli's train of thought was interrupted. He looked up toward the parking space ahead. Across a narrow green belt about half a meter wide, a brand new sapphire blue sport coupe was parked opposite. Too chicken to admit it, huh? Aish. You low-life laborers, are you even men? Beside the coupe, a scrawny man barely over 1.7 meters tall, holding an umbrella, roared toward the service area hall, occasionally spouting phrases in his native Korean tongue. From the passenger seat, a petite girl with a generous figure standing about 1.6 meters tall stepped out. She glanced at the hood and saw nothing but a rain-soaked plastic bag. A hint of helplessness crossed her face. This Korean boyfriend of hers was very good to her, and his family was extremely wealthy. Unfortunately, he always harbored an unpleasant prejudice against their fellow countrymen. This bag might have been blown here by the wind. Don't be mad. Hey baby, why aren't you using your umbrella? Get back in the car, it's cold outside. The man seemed to dote on the girl. He immediately stepped forward with his umbrella, tilting it toward her, coaxing her in a gentle voice. Then, abandoning his indiscriminate ranting, he wore a broad smile to cheer her up as they walked together toward the service area hall. They're heading to the service area. Wanli withdrew his gaze. He quickly pressed the door release button, rushed out of the car, and jogged to catch up with the couple. He saw nothing wrong with the girl having a Korean boyfriend. Having spent years in Yangqing, he had witnessed far too many cases of people bending over backward to fawn over individuals from certain regions and had long developed an extraordinary immunity to such matters. Hearing the rapid footsteps behind him, the Korean man turned around, pulling the girl protectively into his arms, staring at the approaching figure with undisguised hostility. What do you want? I'm going to the service area hall. Wanli, wearing a black baseball cap, kept one hand on the sheep's foot hammer tucked at his lower back, his eyes scanning the surroundings warily. Even though he suspected the monster didn't hunt during the day, he dared not let his guard down for a second. But his demeanor made the Korean man think of a certain raincoat killer from some urban legend, sending a shiver of fear through him. He took a step back, and his hand, which had been holding the girl's shoulder, shifted to press against her back. Then don't follow us. Keep your distance. Perhaps influenced by her boyfriend's values, the girl looked at Wanli with a clear expression of disdain. She held no inherent prejudice against her male compatriots, but only if their status and wealth were comparable to hers. Wanli, with his entire outfit worth less than 500 yuan, clearly didn't warrant her courtesy. You're right. Wanli nodded in agreement. He glanced at the girl, a face scoring over 80, petite, yet strikingly endowed, and then at the frail, short Korean man. He replied calmly, Indeed, humans and animals shouldn't get too close. Wanli wasn't skilled at it. To avoid conflict, he had a habit of first agreeing with whatever the other person said, then redirecting their insult back at them or their family, putting theory into practice. Having said that, Wanli noticed someone getting out of a car a few meters ahead. He quickly strode past the couple and jogged to catch up. This time he encountered no prejudice. He walked with the stranger toward the hall in silence, exchanging no words or glances. That was fine. However, the morning fog had grown even thicker. At a distance of over 30 meters without the neon lights as a reference point, the two nearly took a wrong turn and had to circle a bit before spotting the faint silhouette of the service area building. Arriving at the hall, Wanli wrapped his coat tighter and headed straight for the snail noodle shop, ordering everything he craved in one go. Hey handsome, give me a bowl of 3 liang snail noodles with a fried egg and an extra crispy egg, plus a braised pig trotter and a serving of snail meat. How much? This time he was going to splurge, and he also got to experience the feeling of ordering without asking the price. It felt great. Sorry, the braised pig trotters and snail meat sold out last night, and we haven't had time to make the crispy eggs yet. Is a fried egg okay? The server's voice snapped Wanli back to reality. None. Wanli was furious. He finally dared to indulge without checking the price, and all he got was nothing but a fried egg. Wasn't a fried egg standard? Still, he didn't take it out on the server. Business was that good last night. Yeah, I heard another batch of customers arrived around 3 in the morning and bought up all the remaining food. The server was on the day shift. Head heard it from his colleague during the handover. It made sense. Among the few eateries in the service area, the snail noodle shop was the only one serving hot food around the clock. Those people braving the cold in the dead of night would naturally crave a warm meal. Another batch. Wanli turned his head and scanned the hall. Only then did he notice many new faces lying in various corners, sleeping in their clothes, occupying most of the tables and chairs. Then just give me a bowl with 2 fried eggs. Sure, please wait a moment. A few minutes later, Wanli carried his freshly cooked snail noodles to an empty seat. As he ate, he casually observed the customers around him. Their faces were etched with worry. Many coughed occasionally, some mildly, some more severely. They showed no appetite for food, slumping in their chairs in a daze. Those who appeared healthy were mostly glued to their phones, gathering and discussing the latest online updates. But no one mentioned anything about the monster. Did that creature only attack the drunkard? Wanli breathed a slight sigh of relief. If there weren't many monsters, that was good news for him. With the number of people in the hall, no matter how formidable the creature was, they could find a way to deal with it. Oh no. In a corner of the hall, a kind-hearted woman who had been changing the bandages for the bus driver discovered in horror that the driver had stopped breathing. He's dead. Dead. Several older men quickly gathered around, checking the driver's breath and pulse, and mimicking movie doctors pried open his eyelids to examine his pupils. They ultimately confirmed the bus driver's death. No one was particularly surprised by the outcome, yet their hearts and consciences were tormented. Many couldn't help but wonder if they had risked taking the driver to the nearest city hospital last night, would the result have been different? Were they indirectly responsible for his death? Let's wait for the rescue team to arrive. A middle-aged man withdrew his hand with a complex expression. He looked at the 100 or so people in the hall and said in a deep voice, when the temperature rises at noon, the fog will dissipate and the highway will reopen. Rescue will come soon. Everyone should report this to the authorities first and follow their instructions. This decision met with unanimous agreement. A young woman spoke up quietly. I called the police several times this morning, but the line was always busy. Busy? Those who heard this were taken aback. Then one by one they took out their phones and tried to call. Without exception, they were met with the same line busy message. The atmosphere in the hall was somewhat oppressive. Everyone to varying degrees sensed something unusual and thus felt uneasy and fearful, uncertain of what to do or how to act, standing rooted to the spot in a daze. The mist doesn't fall under any known category, we can't judge it by past experience. Wanli sighed inwardly. The mist outside was very strange. It lingered without dispersing, unaffected by the wind, and likely wouldn't dissipate as the temperature rose. Moreover, whether the temperature would rise or fall was still uncertain. They'll buy 2 corn cobs, 2 tea eggs, 2 hamburgers, and half a fried chicken for lunch, then find a place to gather. Wanli got up and went to the burger shop to purchase food. He decided to stay in crowded places during the day and return to sleep on the bus with the college students at night. He aimed to keep a low profile as much as possible. At the moment, the service area still had running water and electricity, and the phones had network access to receive online information. Aside from the panic triggered by news of someone's death, everyone retained their rationality, and no one connected the events outside with the apocalypse. By the afternoon and evening, when people saw that the mist showed no sign of dissipating and the weather grew colder, panic would begin to spread. After another 2 or 3 days, when negative emotions became hard to suppress, some might resort to irrational actions. Or perhaps it wouldn't even take that long. As soon as that monster attacked drivers or passengers once or twice more, or was discovered by others, the service area would descend into complete chaos. Only then would it truly test people's hearts. This spot will do. Wanli found a seat with a clear view. He didn't play on his phone, instead gnawing on a corn cob while observing the outside. He watched those returning to their cars to rest after eating, or those who had just woken up and came to the hall for food. If that monster attacked humans indiscriminately day and night, there would always be some unlucky soul to fall prey. "Did you bully my girlfriend this morning?" A group approached. Xiaohao, accompanied by several male classmates, stared at Wanli with a livid face. "Bully her." Wanli caught sight of Lin Xiaoling hiding behind them, putting on a pitiful act, and immediately understood. Looking up at Xiaohao, he said sincerely, "What happened this morning was a misunderstanding. I've already explained." As he spoke, worried that the other party might think he lacked sincerity, he pulled the claw hammer from his waistband and placed it on the table. Laying down one's weapon was a gesture of goodwill, much like in movies where 2 mob bosses negotiate having their underlings frisk them and take away their weapons first. Wanli had no underlings, so he simply placed it on the table. Of course, the claw hammer was still within easy reach. Should things take a wrong turn, he could grab it and strike back in the shortest possible time. These were all details born of experience. Xiaohao's face stiffened. The classmates beside him also grew tense. Wasn't this supposed to go differently from the usual dormitory disputes? Shouldn't there be a few heated exchanges, then some people stepping in to reason, and everyone going their separate ways? Why did he pull out a claw hammer after just one sentence from them? How forget it, let's not bother with him. Seeing Wanli produce the claw hammer, Lin Xiaoling, not wanting her boyfriend to get into trouble, pulled him away. The group came and went in a flash. Wanli was a bit taken aback. What were they here for? Never mind, gathering information about the monster was more important. Wanli tucked the claw hammer back into his waistband and resumed his observation of the outside. Time passed. Unnoticed, the sky outside darkened and the neon lights of the service area buildings flickered on. Under the interweaving of colorful lights, the mist, like layers of thin veils shrouding everything, did not dissipate, but grew thicker and more hazy. So cold. Wanli, who had been sitting still all day, felt his hands and feet ache from the cold. The clothes stored in his ton shoe space hadn't reached the tenfold return time yet, so he couldn't take them out. He was only wearing 2 thin long-sleeved shirts and an ordinary down jacket, which couldn't withstand the pervasive chill. His skin was covered in goosebumps, his fingers and toes throbbed with pain, and his calves and arms were icy cold. However, the day's surveillance wasn't without results. Wanli roughly counted 17 people who had come. Among them, the one who stayed outside the longest was a young girl who paced around for 26 minutes while on a phone call. She wasn't attacked. The remaining 16 people stayed for varying lengths of time, also without incident. "They'll check again tonight. Let me grab a quick meal first." His body couldn't withstand the cold, partly because his clothing was thin and partly because he was hungry. A good meal could solve most problems. At that moment, the atmosphere in the hall grew even more oppressive. A woman with weaker psychological resilience couldn't help but demand answers. Didn't they say the mist would clear as the temperature rose during the day? Now a whole day has passed, why hasn't the mist outside dissipated? Her words were like a stone thrown into a calm lake, stirring up ripples. Others joined in, voicing their inner anxiety and panic. Exactly. The ambulance hasn't come either. If the mist never clears, are we going to be trapped in this service area forever? What do we do? I told my family I'd be back by tonight at the latest. Damn, I had plans to meet a female streamer with 1 million followers tonight. Everything was arranged. Now I can't make it. I probably won't get another chance. Although everyone knew the weather was beyond their control, more and more people joined the chorus of accusations, their tones growing increasingly irritable. They needed an outlet to release their pent-up negative emotions. I'm not a god, how am I supposed to know why the mist isn't clearing? Seeing that emotions were about to spiral out of control, the man didn't hesitate to shout back, cutting off everyone's complaints. Didn't he want to go home early too? But this wasn't something he could control. What could he do? He had only meant to calm everyone down, so why was he being treated like the culprit? Damn it, do whatever you want from now on. Just leave me alone. The man cursed in frustration, then turned and walked toward the fast food restaurant. He felt he should never have spoken up in the first place that morning. Weren't there over 100 people in the hall? Were they all brainless? No one else said a word, and he was the fool who stuck his neck out. He had only brought trouble upon himself. His body can't stay in the hall overnight. The issue of the dense, lingering mist had yet to be resolved. How to deal with the bus driver's body had become the next pressing problem. According to everyone's initial expectations, the temperature would rise during the day, the mist would clear, and an ambulance would arrive soon to take the bus driver's body away. So leaving it in the hall hadn't been a problem for the service area staff. But now circumstances had changed. No one knew when the mist outside would dissipate. Could they really keep a corpse in the hall indefinitely? If not the hall, then where? Some drivers and passengers stepped forward to object. The service area's only sheltered space was the hall. If not there, were they supposed to move the body to the outdoor parking lot? How is that any different from abandoning a corpse? Put it at the gas station, under the charging canopy, anywhere but the hall. The service area staff were adamant. Their staff dormitories were on the second floor. How could they allow a corpse on the first floor? This wasn't a morgue. Put it at the damn gas station. Aish, not under the charging canopy either. As soon as the words were spoken, many voices rose. Drivers and passengers had parked their cars in every corner of the lot. They needed to return to their vehicles at night to rest. What if they got up half asleep to use the restroom and stepped out to see a pale corpse? Wouldn't that scare them into a heart attack? The two sides argued endlessly. Everyone stop arguing. Let's place the body in the outdoor corridor covered with cardboard and plastic. First, it's cold outside, and second, we won't have to worry about rain. Someone suggested moving the body under the eaves outside the hall, covering it with cardboard. Everything else could wait until the highway was reopened. It was a compromise. Neither side was satisfied, but the argument ceased. So everyone chipped in some money, found 2 volunteers to carry the body to the eaves outside, covered it with cardboard to avoid startling the unaware, and laid a layer of waterproof plastic over it. The matter was temporarily settled. The cold wind made the plastic film rustle incessantly. The plastic could block the rain, but it couldn't keep out the pervasive mist. The thick fog encroached, tendrils of mist seeping through the gaps in the cardboard, enveloping the body completely. As the wind stirred the cardboard, it seemed as if the corpse beneath was shifting and trembling. After resolving the issue of disposing the bodies and venting their frustrations through a heated argument, everyone's emotions stabilized considerably, and they each busied themselves with their own tasks. In a corner of the hall, a dozen young people were huddled around tables, chattering animatedly about the news online. Holy shit. Several passenger planes couldn't land precisely due to weather issues and skidded off the runway. 2 crashed into buildings, 1 plowed into a highway. The scenes were more terrifying than movie special effects that made my scalp tingle. I can't imagine how many casualties there are. My God, can't the control tower guide them into land? It's terrifying. No one knows the specifics. Sigh, it's snowing in the north and hailing in the south. The weather problems are no joke. Right. Speaking of hail, I have a few videos here, all from south of the river. Quite a few people have been killed by falling icicles or hailstones, and no one has even collected their bodies yet. Look, their heads are smashed to pieces. The young man speaking showed his phone screen to a few women at the next table. The photos on the screen were Don't show me that I'm scared. The girls were timid. They glanced briefly, then turned away, their faces pale. Scared? The young man, as if discovering something amusing, instead of backing off, found even more gruesome pictures, stood up, and thrust the phone screen right in front of the girls. Take it away. The girls screamed and pushed the young man's phone away. In the scuffle, some physical contact was inevitable. This slight physical contact made the young man quite smug. The factory girls and delinquent girls he usually interacted with were as rough as men. He never knew who was taking advantage of whom. They were nothing like these college girls with their sweet voices who blushed and got shy at the drop of a hat. He intensified his harassment, laughing excitedly. What the hell is wrong with you? A tall male student from the same group, unable to stand it any longer, stood up to confront the young man. Since they were all on a trip together, it was natural to step up when a female classmate was being bullied, especially when the harassment was so blatant. What's your problem? The young man's smile vanished. He stepped forward and said belligerently, What's it to you if I'm chatting with the ladies? You want to fight? As he spoke, young men from 2 adjacent tables stood up, staring at the male student with ill intent. That's harassment, not chatting. They weren't saying anything. Why are you the only one with a problem? My classmate refused several times. When a girl says no, she means yes, don't you know that? If you don't get it, go home to your mommy and stop being a nuisance. You? The male student's face flushed red. He wanted to reason with them. But none of his male classmates stood up to support him. They all just hung their heads, which infuriated him. The numbers on both sides were about the same, and they even had some male classmates who weren't present. Plus, they were in the right. What was there to be afraid of? If it came down to it, they could just fight. What's going on? Yu Sahan returned from the restroom and sensed the tense atmosphere. She looked at her best friend, quizzically wondering why the male students were confronting a few young men. However, given the current special circumstances, she didn't want to see her classmates clash with these local youths. She moved to a table further away and gestured for the others to join her. It's nothing. Lin Xiaoling walked over with a pout, feeling a bit uncomfortable. She was forthright by nature and always said what was on her mind. She looked up at the male student who had spoken earlier. We don't know when we'll be able to leave this service area. Let's try not to cause any trouble, okay? Who's causing trouble? The tall male student looked utterly wronged. He had just been sticking up for the girls in their group, so how did Lin Xiaoling make it sound like he was the one stirring things up? Fine, you weren't causing trouble. Lin Xiaoling dismissed him curtly. She then ignored him and fell silent, her expression sullen, as she took out her phone to text her boyfriend who had been in the restroom for half an hour without returning. Let me say something. Yu Sahan gave the male student a slight nod. They were all traveling together, so they must have gotten along well on ordinary days. The past couple of days had been stressful, which was why words had been a bit harsh. Besides, she knew the male student wasn't the type to cause trouble. But not knowing the full story, she didn't feel it was her place to say much. She turned to the dozen or so classmates and changed the subject. I just saw the latest official announcement. All schools are suspended and all businesses are having employees work from home. No specific date has been set for resumption. This situation seems more serious than we thought. Do you all think we should buy more food just in case? Food and water are always humanity's top priority. According to information uploaded by netizens, people had died on the roadside in some places, and no one from the relevant authorities had come to deal with it for over 10 hours. So when would they trapped in this service area finally see rescue? If the situation continued to deteriorate and they were stranded for days or even weeks, how would they solve the problem of food and drink? The service area's food supply wasn't unlimited. If they didn't stock up now, by the time others realized the severity of the problem, there might be none left to buy. Don't buy instant noodles, buy more snacks. Instant noodles are. Lin Xiaoling was just about to complain that instant noodles had no nutritional value when she suddenly stopped mid-sentence and stared suspiciously at a figure outside the hall. That figure wasn't standing under the eaves, but out in the open, not even holding an umbrella. It stood motionless, letting the rain soak it, staring fixedly at the people inside the hall. What's that person doing standing at the entrance? Who? Yu Sahan followed her gaze. She couldn't make out the figure's specific features, but she felt an inexplicable sense of unease. Let's not worry about others for now. Let's go to the convenience store to buy food. Wait a bit, How will be back soon. People in love always think of their partner in everything they do. Lin Xiaoling was no exception. She loved going to the supermarket with her boyfriend to buy all kinds of snacks and treats. Yu Sahan was a bit irritated. She really wanted to just ditch her best friend. But after hesitating for a moment and seeing that there weren't many customers in the convenience store, she decided to wait until everyone was together before buying food. While they waited, Yu Sahan discussed with her classmates which foods were nutritious, filling, and long-lasting, so they could buy. It's hooray. Wanli had been observing the situation outside. The moment he saw the figure at the door, his pupils dilated sharply. His right hand instinctively reached for the claw hammer at his waist. Then he slowly rose and began to edge his way towards the center of the hall. At that moment, several dozen people were gathered in the hall. If that monster charged in to slaughter them, he might just find an opportunity to strike and eliminate the threat for good. Strangely, the monster made no move. It was still selecting its prey, perhaps. It stood still for 2 or 3 minutes until a woman noticed the figure at the door and walked over with an umbrella. An additional figure standing outside the hall was nothing unusual, but standing motionless in the freezing rain without an umbrella, that was decidedly abnormal. Need some help? A kind-hearted woman approached with an umbrella, intending to ask if she needed assistance. But as she drew nearer, she was startled by the woman's appearance. The woman standing outside had a face as pale as paper, bloodshot eyes, and a wound on her forehead that was swollen and pale from the rain soaking. She looked like someone who had drowned 2 or 3 days prior, utterly devoid of any trace of life. Especially her blood-red eyes, unblinking and fixed on the newcomer, sent a chill down the woman's spine. You. The woman's lips trembled, unable to form a complete sentence. The woman before her was simply too. The bus driver's corpse she had seen that morning hadn't filled her with such dread. It was almost unimaginable that the woman before her was still alive. Damn, a bowl of snail noodles costs $18. A grumbling voice broke the stalemate. Near the side door, a man carrying a takeout bag of snail noodles walked along the road toward his parked car, bringing dinner to his girlfriend, who was too cold to get out. Without a word, the woman stepped back a few paces, matching the man's footsteps as she concealed herself. Her figure gradually faded into the thick fog. In moments, she vanished completely. Cough, cough. The woman gasped for air, but inhaling too much cold air triggered a fit of coughing. Just a few seconds of eye contact had made her feel as though she were being stalked by a monster, so terrified she dared not breathe, holding her breath until the other woman had gone. Is it hunting those who leave the hall? In the center of the hall, Wanli frowned. Earlier, the creature had repeatedly made motions as if to pounce on the woman with the umbrella, yet for some reason it had hesitated. The departure of the lone man gave it a new target, and it abandoned the woman with the umbrella, shifting its focus to the solitary man. They'll see if that man comes back to the hall tomorrow. Wanli dared not follow recklessly. Gripping his claw hammer, he found a spot with multiple escape routes and sat down, his expression grim. The creature had not attacked the woman with the umbrella, but instead followed the lone man, which deeply worried him. This behavior of hunting isolated prey to avoid alarming others was a sign of intelligence. How I want some chips. Seeing her boyfriend return, Lin Xiaoling trotted over and threw herself into his arms, acting coy. Sure, Xiao Hao agreed without hesitation. He held his girlfriend, gently catching a faint sweet fragrance emanating from her collar. Unfortunately, the service area was not the place. They would have to wait until the fog lifted and the highway reopened. He eagerly anticipated the time when the fog would clear and everyone would arrive in Qinglai. They had been together for nearly 2 years and had long since mastered the art of duo-queuing, but it was limited to that. His girlfriend didn't like playing support, only willing on special occasions. Damn, that chick is something else. Huisha licked his lips. Lin Xiaoling was the cute type of girl. She was about 1.6 meters tall with a fair, slightly round face. Without makeup, she scored a 7 or 8 out of 10. With a bit of light makeup, she became a high-value, pure-looking young woman. Pure on the surface, but in reality, it was hard for them not to be tempted. I think the tall girl is even more enticing. Agreed. The two young men stared greedily at Yusahan's back. Even though she wore a loose, cream-colored wool coat that covered her thighs and torso, it couldn't hide her impressive assets and graceful curves. Can't see her face, probably not good-looking. With a figure like that, who needs to see the face? Heh. The other young men joined the discussion, their words growing increasingly vulgar, punctuated by lecherous laughter. This was one of their favorite topics. In contrast, Yusahan and her group, who had just arrived at the convenience store, were not in the best mood. Aren't you restocking the shelves? How come there are no self-heating hot pots or cup noodles? All sold out. The cashier rubbed her sore arms. The number of items she had scanned since last night exceeded what she usually scanned in half a year. On top of that, her colleague, who was supposed to take over the morning shift, had called in sick and was lying in the dormitory coughing incessantly. She had to manage the store and take care of her colleague, leaving her no time to even sit down for a sip of water. You can check the convenience store at the gas station. They might still have self-heating hot pots and cup noodles. Yusahan's mood darkened. It seemed they were not the first to realize the severity of the situation. While they were still hesitating about buying more food, others had already taken action and stocked up on supplies. I'm going to check the convenience store at the gas station. What about you all? Yusahan looked at her group of friends. Most of them immediately nodded in agreement. They weren't stupid. With so many people buying food and no news of rescue, didn't that clearly indicate the seriousness of the problem? Haha, I'll pass. Unfazed by the gravity of the situation, Lin Xiaoling held up a few bags of snacks and said with a smile, "I'll just eat these. Then we'll go." Wait. Xiao Hao let go of his girlfriend's wrist. "He'll go with you. I want to buy more filling food too." His girlfriend might treat snacks as a meal, but he couldn't. Otherwise, when she got hungry at night, he'd have to go out and buy more anyway. It was better to stock up now. Besides, he too sensed that something was wrong. How? Before he could take 2 steps, Lin Xiaoling pouted and pulled him back, wearing a pitiful expression. "You guys stay here. They'll bring some for you." Yusahan was feeling irritable. With that, she led the other classmates toward the gas station at a brisk pace. Without buying food, she felt a strong sense of unease. Henin is the best. Lin Xiaoling made a heart gesture with her hands. Then she pulled her boyfriend toward an empty table, munching on snacks while waiting for the group to return. Xiao Hao was utterly helpless. He knew why his girlfriend was acting this way. It was because of some past events. Initially, the person he wanted to pursue was not Lin Xiaoling, but Yusahan. To get close to Yusahan, Xiao Hao had added Lin Xiaoling as a contact, planning to bribe her into playing matchmaker. But as they communicated more and more frequently, and after repeated rejections, they gradually ended up together. "Xiaoling, we've been together for 2 years. Don't you trust me?" "Of course not." Lin Xiaoling blinked, pretending not to know what he was talking about. Out of habit, she lifted her legs onto his thighs, turned to face him, and playfully fed him a chip. Sigh. Xiao Hao opened his mouth and ate the chip. Helpless as he was the one who had confessed first. In truth, Lin Xiling's insecurity wasn't entirely her fault. Yu Sahan truly embodied the feeling of a first love. Xiao Hao was not bad-looking himself and was known as a wealthy second generation on campus, but even he felt pressured and inferior in Yu Sahan's presence, let alone Lin Xiaoling, who came from an ordinary family. Henan's back. Did you get food? Before long the group returned, each carrying a large. Yu Sahan placed a bag of food on the table. This is for you too. All instant noodles. Lin Xiaoling opened the bag and rummaged through it. Most of it was instant noodles, and they were the bagged kind, not cup noodles. The rest were just a few scattered snacks. She was somewhat dissatisfied. No self-heating hot pot. No. These instant noodles were the last few packs. Yu Sahan shook her head. The gas station convenience store still had instant noodles, mainly because most passengers didn't know there was a convenience store there or that it sold noodles and drinks. They had managed to snag a bargain. Hey, where's Fong Yuan? I wanted to treat him to some chocolate. A girl looked around the group in confusion. Fong Yuan was the one who had spoken up for the girls earlier. Aside from Lin Xiaoling, who thought he was a troublemaker, the other girls had a good impression of him. He's probably sulking. Lin Xiaoling said dismissively. Let's put the food back in the car first. Let's go. I bought a few bottles of beer, we can have a drink tonight. How about a dice game? Sure. The group chatted as they walked toward the parked bus. Having bought a fair amount of food, they felt somewhat reassured. As for Fong Yuan, there was no need to worry. The gas station was only a few dozen meters from the service area hall. Fong Yuan was an adult with a sturdy build, he couldn't possibly get lost. Besides, everyone knew he had a smoking habit and was probably hiding somewhere to smoke and relieve his boredom. At the exit of the service area road, Fong Yuan, standing at 182 meters tall, crouched beneath an advertising billboard, took out his last cigarette and held it between his lips, fumbling in his pocket for a lighter. How did I get into trouble? Fong Yuan grumbled, crumpling the empty cigarette pack into a ball and tossing it into the distance. He cupped his hand to shield the wind, clicking the lighter. Click. He lit the cigarette and took a deep drag. The nicotine flowed down his throat into his lungs, bringing a slight numbness. The cold, icy air offered a brief relief to his stifled mood. Phew, Fong Yuan exhaled a puff of white smoke. It seemed that some of the depression in his heart was expelled with that breath. On the cold winter night, the faint warmth of the cigarette gave him a touch of comfort. Tap, tap, tap. A strangely rhythmic footstep sounded from behind. At this hour, the only one who would come looking for him was probably his roommate and best buddy. Tap, tap. The footsteps drew closer. Fong Yuan didn't turn around. He opened a plastic bag, found a newly bought pack of Furong Wang cigarettes, tore it open, took one out, and reached it backward. Good brothers need no words. My. Fong Yuan waited for over 10 seconds, but the cigarette wasn't taken from his hand. Usually, even a cigarette hidden in the crevice of the bedboard would be swiped by his dog-like roommate. Had he changed his ways today? Phew, a faint current of air brushed against his neck. A hoarse, raspy, leaking sound echoed in his ear. How did I get into trouble? Fong Yuan was startled. The voice was unfamiliar, not someone he knew. The tone was strange, and it sounded very unpleasant. Who was so bored as to mimic someone else's words? Bewildered, he turned his head to look behind him. What the? Before he could finish his exclamation, the creature behind him lunged forward, violently pinning Fong Yuan to the ground. It bit down on the carotid artery in his neck, tearing wildly. Warm blood splattered everywhere. Gurgle. Caught completely off guard, Fong Yuan didn't even have time to resist. The carotid artery in his neck was torn open, blood gushed out rapidly, and the strength in his body was drained away. He reached a hand toward the service area, opened his mouth to call for help, but could only produce a gurgling sound. Thick fog shrouded the area. No one saw him being attacked. The freezing rain fell in a steady drizzle, washing away the bloodstains which flowed along the terrain into the green belt beside the road. In the hall, Su Wanli saw Yu Sahan and her group return safely, and his resolve to never act alone grew even stronger. He turned and walked to the fast food restaurant to pack some meals, intending to return to the bus with Yu Sahan and the others. He noticed the iron trays inside the transparent glass counter of the restaurant, filled with various homestyle dishes, steaming and fragrant. No one came to eat today. Su Wanli felt a bit puzzled. That shouldn't be the case. The convenience store had been almost completely cleared out by drivers and passengers, so why wasn't anyone coming to eat? The prices have gone up, the serving auntie reminded him. Prices up. Su Wanli turned his head to look at the small blackboard on the upper right. It read 1 meat and 1 vegetable, 12 crossed out 50. 1 meat and 1 vegetable had risen to 50 yuan. Looking further, 1 meat and 2 vegetables had also gone from 18 yuan to 70 yuan, and adding an extra vegetable cost 20 yuan. 2 meats and 2 vegetables had even broken into 3 digits, exactly 100. Not only had the set meals increased in price, but the originally unlimited rice was now rationed, and an extra serving cost 5 yuan. Are they insane? Su Wanli couldn't help but complain. This wasn't a price hike, it was outright profiteering. The normal price for one meat and one vegetable was 12 yuan, and even then many customers thought it was too expensive to buy. Now it had jumped straight to 50 yuan. We didn't set the price. I mean your boss is crazy. It wasn't our boss who set the price either. Huh. Su Wanli was bewildered. If it wasn't the boss who A middle-aged man wearing gold-rimmed glasses walked over with a smile. He took out an unopened pack of black Furong Wang cigarettes, tore it open in front of Su Wanli, took one out, and offered it. Brother, I've already bought out the fast food restaurant, including the staff and the food. Bought out. Su Wanli took the cigarette and tucked it behind his ear. He occasionally lit one with his co-workers, not smoking, just keeping them company. That's right. The middle-aged man took out another cigarette and lit it. He took a deep drag and exhaled the smoke. My surname is Liang, given name Yukai. You can call me boss. His decision to spend a large sum to take over all the food in the restaurant wasn't impulsive. Seeing many people frantically buying food at the convenience store and thinking about the delayed rescue news, he sensed an opportunity to make a fortune. After careful consideration, he steeled himself to make the move. Hello, Boss Liang. Su Wanli called out casually. He didn't know what the man wanted. Brother. Liang Yukai took 2 puffs of his cigarette and flicked the ash. I'd like to treat you to a few meals. Treat me to a meal. Yes. Why, oi? Su Wanli became instantly wary. He wasn't a greenhorn fresh out of society and naturally didn't believe in free lunches. Whenever he encountered something like this, he never thought of taking advantage. Instead, he first considered whether he had anything valuable on him that might be coveted. Haha, I just think you're no ordinary man, brother. I'd like to make a friend. And if someone comes to cause trouble, I hope you'll put in a good word for me. Liang Yukai stated his purpose. Before taking over the restaurant, he had inquired about the food stocks of other eateries. Given the current flow of people and dining situation, the other restaurants could only sustain operations for a day or two before announcing they were sold out. By then, his would be the only restaurant in the entire service area with food for sale. People would have no choice but to come. But with such high prices, troublemakers were bound to appear. So Liang Yukai wanted to find a few people to back him up. And Su Wanli, who carried a claw hammer and dressed like an ex-convict, was his primary target for recruitment. If all went well, he might be able to double the food prices again and make a killing. Buying a new car and a new house with a girl on each arm. Life would be sweet. Who would care about a few irrelevant curses? Upon hearing this, Su Wanli breathed a sigh of relief. So he wanted him to be a shilla thug. But he had no interest in that at all. Right now, he just wanted to eat his meal in peace, go back to the bus to lie down and wait for the hoarding space to return the supplies. He would ignore everything else. Brother, listen to the price first. Liang Yukai was good at reading people. Seeing a slight change in Su Wanli's expression, he quickly sped up the conversation and laid out his offer. 500 a day plus 3 meals. How about it? No deal. 600. Liang Yukai gritted his teeth and raised the price. This amount was a bit beyond his psychological limit, and with 3 meals a day, it was nearly 1,000. But he wanted to win Su Wanli over even more, so he urged earnestly, brother, standing by doesn't necessarily mean fighting. You just come over during meals, eat, and sit a bit longer to earn 600. It's a pretty good deal. I just got out after 10 years of reform, and I don't want to stir up any more trouble. So don't mention it again. Su Wanli fabricated the story. Since many drivers and passengers assumed he was an ex-convict, he might as well use that identity to keep any reckless people from bothering him. 10 years. Liang Yukai's heart was shaken, and his gaze involuntarily dodged. He reached up to adjust his glasses, trying to hide his inner panic, and pondered how to continue. 10 years. That wasn't a minor offense. And Su Wanli didn't look old, probably just 25 or 26. Subtract 10 years of reform. The thought was terrifying. Let's head back after dinner. Well, wait for Fong Yuan too. Great, then I want chicken cubes, Kung Pao chicken. Yu Sahan and Lin Shaoling approached, carrying bulging plastic bags. Several boys hauled 6 cases of 24 cans of beer, piling the small table with various foods. Finding it inconvenient to eat, they moved everything to the floor, leaving 2 to guard while the others went to order at the fast food counter. Holy crap. $50 for 1 meat and 1 veggie. Are you robbing us? What the heck? How much it? The group was stunned when they saw the prices on the small blackboard. A few extra bucks here and there they could grit their teeth and accept, but doubling or tripling the prices. That was treating them like fools. Are you getting takeout or eating here? Su Wanli asked. If they got takeout, he would pack his meal and head back to the bus. If they dined in, he would join them and return to the bus afterward. He was all about going with the flow. How well find another place to eat. A boy shook his head with a wry smile. Who wanted to be a fool? The group turned and headed straight to the neighboring snail noodle shop without a second glance. Welcome back anytime. Liang Yukai called out to their retreating figures, showing no frustration over the lost business. He had anticipated this all along. Normally, people resist price hikes no matter how small and need time and a reason to accept them. Give me 1 set meal with 2 meats and 2 veggies. Su Wanli pulled out his phone to scan the QR code. Since the students were likely dining in at the snail noodle shop, there was no need for him to get takeout. After ordering, he directly bought 2 frozen whole chickens, 2 pounds of ribs, 5 pounds of pork, 10 pounds of rice, and some durable vegetables from Yuan Yukai. Others might not be able to cook these ingredients, but he could. He had brought pots and pans home. Brother Su, eat and drink your fill. If it's not enough, just ask Sister Wang to add more dishes and rice. Don't be shy. Sister Wang take good care of Brother Su. No extra charge for additional dishes or rice. Liang Yukai greeted warmly. He first went to the convenience store to buy a few packs of cigarettes worth around $20 each, then headed straight for the corner of the hall, where a group of shifty young men were loitering, looking for those young punks. Su Wanli saw through Liang Yukai's plan at a glance. Indeed, those young men were short-sighted and could be hired with a little money and favors. They were also at a hot-blooded, impulsive age, making them the best candidates aside from Su Wanli to act as enforcers. Or thugs. Other men or college students had their reservations. They weren't suitable. Brother Yukai. Everyone call him Brother Kai. Hello, Brother Kai. Brother Kai is awesome. Within 2 minutes, the young men were enthusiastically calling him brother. Whether they were sincere or not, they put on a good show surrounding Liang Youcai, wiping down tables, handing him cigarettes, and lighting them. Extremely eager. Sister Wang, serve hot food to my brothers. Liang Yukai puffed on his cigarette, feeling he had brought back 6 young men, agreeing on a price of 200 per person per day, including lunch and dinner. A bit pricey, but the numbers were an advantage. Imagine a few shifty-looking young thugs sitting at the nearby tables. Wouldn't that make anyone thinking of causing trouble think twice? Worried about the impact on business? No need. Liang Yukai wasn't running a normal business anyway. He wasn't afraid of customers not coming, he was afraid of someone leading a riot. Oh, isn't this the guy who treated us to double happiness cigarettes last night? Tisk tisk, $100 meal with 2 meats and 2 veggies. Must be rich. Haha, Brother Fire Snake, you forgot. We're different from them. They pay to eat, we eat for free, and people pay. Their leader, Brother Fire Snake, sat at the empty table next to him. While waiting for their food, they noticed Su Wanli eating quietly and began jeering sarcastically. However, they didn't go too far, just a few verbal jabs. After all, they were hired to do a job. It wouldn't do to offend the customers. Su Wanli put down his chopsticks. Calmly, he wiped his mouth with a napkin, picked up his briefcase from the seat beside him, and stood up to leave. Clink clatter. As he passed by Brother Fire Snake's group, whether by accident or design, a metallic clanking sound came from his briefcase, startling Brother Fire Snake, who felt a chill at the back of his head. Phew. At the snail noodle shop, Yusahan's group had just finished their meal and came out. Seeing Su Wanli also heading out, they nodded slightly before following their classmates back to the bus. Due to the unpleasantness earlier, only Yusahan maintained a semblance of politeness among the group. Phew. As they stepped out of the hall, a biting cold wind hit them. The air was heavy with moisture, and the cold wind seeped through the gaps in collars and cuffs, making them shiver uncontrollably. It's snowing. Su Wanli was startled. He held out his hand, and freezing rain mixed with fine snowflakes fell into his palm. This weather was like a natural cold storage. Placing sealed meat on the bus roof could effectively extend its shelf life. He looked back at the hall. The young men, led by Brother Fire Snake, were all wearing thin jackets with only a t-shirt underneath. Yet they seemed oblivious to the cold, chatting and laughing as usual. It had to be said, these guys were remarkably cold resistant. Awesome, I can take some great photos tomorrow morning. Count me in for the photos. Yeah, let's take a group photo. By the way, when is Fong Yuan coming back? No idea, maybe later. The girls led by Yusahan chatted and laughed along the way, not too worried about the boy named Fong Yuan. A few boys who were close to Fong Yuan had called him several times. I'll wait, do you have a grudge against Brother Su? After Su Wanli left, Liang Yukai asked seriously. Huh. Brother Fire Snake was taken aback. He didn't understand why the benefactor looked so serious. A little, but don't worry, Brother Kai. We know the rules. They occasionally worked as bouncers at bars and knew the bottom lines of their bosses. As long as they didn't cross those lines, everything else was negotiable. Take my advice. It's best not to mess with that guy. Liang Yukai patted Brother Fire Snake on the shoulder meaningfully before turning to the kitchen to arrange the price hikes. He had spent a fortune to take over the fast food joint and hired some thugs as backup, not just to earn a mere 10 or 20,000. Such a small profit was far from satisfying his appetite. At around 9 in the evening, the fast food restaurant had sold only 2 set meals. One was Su Wanli's Tomiya Tweveggie combo, and the other was a 1 meat and veggie meal bought by a mother for her child. The other drivers and passengers chose to eat instant noodles or bread rather than be ripped off. I'll wait, take a couple of guys and dump the leftover food, Liang Yukai said loudly. He wanted to make a show of having the remaining food carried out and dumped plate by plate into the trash. Not buying, huh? Let's see who cracks first. Damn it. Does that bastard have no conscience? He'd rather throw it away than lower the price. Asshole. Scumbag. This scene sparked outrage among the drivers and passengers in the hall, with a few hot-tempered ones cursing loudly. Liang Yukai shielded himself with the young men, indifferent to the verbal abuse. His message was clear. He would rather dump unsold food than sell it at a discount. Not only that, but he also instructed the serving ant to change the prices every day, raising them by 10 to 30 bucks each time, determined to hold his ground. "Brother Kai, won't you lose money like this?" Brother Fire Snake asked curiously. He didn't care about Liang Yukai's losses, he only cared about the free food and the 200 bucks a day. "Don't worry, I won't lose." Liang Yukai smiled confidently. He had been through something similar before. A few years ago, a severe winter accident caused a highway standstill that lasted over 10 days, and a single cup of instant noodles couldn't be bought for less than 100 bucks. Now the situation outside was even more dire. The drivers and passengers skipping his fast food for snail noodles, burgers, and fried chicken might seem bad for business, but it was only depleting the stock of those other eateries. Within 2 days, those shops would announce they were sold out. And then he would make even more. If the convenience store's instant noodles and self-heating hot pots hadn't sold out so fast, he would have bought them out too. The bus was quite lively that night. Xiao Hao and his group, having bought snacks and beer, gathered at the back to play drinking games. They felt a hint of unease, but not much, believing that with modern technology the disaster outside couldn't last long. At most a few days, and they'd be rescued, returning to normal life. "King, reveal your identity." "Yen the king." "How is it you again?" "We have no fun at all." "Haha, just luck." "Hurry up and give the order." Then number 6 and number 9 have to bite a chocolate stick from both ends. "Who are 6 and 9? The group was playing the king's game. In this game, the king's command was absolute, and all participants had to obey unconditionally. If one refused to obey, they had to drink as a penalty. College life is really something. Su Wanli sighed with emotion. He curled up on 2 seats, covered himself with a small quilt he had brought, and took out his phone to watch videos. There were still several hours until the tenfold return period. He could sleep and wake up to change into new clothes. However, Su Wanli dared not sleep. He worried those college students would drink too much beer, get off to pee in the middle of the night, and leave the door open, creating a hazard. So he stayed awake until past 2 in the morning, only putting down his phone and drifting off to sleep after confirming all the passengers were dead asleep. The next morning, just after 5 before dawn, Su Wanli woke up full of anticipation and asked the Tun Tun, "Can I retrieve the clothes stored yesterday?" "Storage complete. Ready for retrieval at any time." The Tun Tun Mouse's voice lifted his spirits. The return time for clothes was double every 2 hours. Stored from a little after 8 yesterday morning until now, over 20 hours had passed, meeting the tenfold qualitative change standard. Retrieve. Just as he was about to say retrieve, Su Wanli paused. It was unlikely any passenger, but for safety he propped up his quilt high, creating a sealed space, like a small tent, before retrieving the clothes returned by the Tun Tun Mouse. Retrieve the clothes. Ding. Retrieved clothes ready. Stab-resistant leather jacket. Beneath a crudely made exterior lies the ability to withstand 90% of slashes and thrusts from blades. Disadvantages are weak cold protection and poor texture. Cold-proof winter jeans, durable, practical, windproof, and warm. Thermal underwear, antibacterial, miter-removing, moisture-wicking, and warming. Antibacterial boxer briefs, moisture-wicking and quick-drying, feeling as if swimming freely in air, providing a safe and comfortable environment for your little brother to stretch unhindered. Su Wanli naturally made a motion of holding something with both hands. The next second, neatly folded clothes materialized out of thin air, landing in his hands. He looked at the clothes in his hands, read the descriptions from the Tun Tun Mouse, and felt increasingly satisfied. This wait of over 20 hours was not in vain. Not bad. Su Wanli was very pleased. He opened his handbag on the floor, dumped out the tools, packed the new clothes in a clean plastic bag, and put them inside. Then he stored the still warm quilt and the 2 autumn shirts and down jacket he was wearing into the Tun Tun Mouse space. Ding. Storage complete. Detected surplus 4-dimensional attributes in the host: strength 3 points, agility 2 points, endurance 4 points, spirit 2 points. Store. Does not occupy storage space. Surplus 4-dimensional attributes. Su Wanli looked at the prompt from the Tun Tun Mouse, puzzled why his body had surplus 4-dimensional attributes. Could it be because he had been eating and sleeping for the past 2 days? Tun Tun Mouse, can the returned 4-dimensional attributes permanently enhance the body? 4-dimensional attributes are a special medium that does not occupy storage space. The host can retrieve them when needed or store them indefinitely until the limit is reached. Limit. Su Wanli grew more confused. He sat up straight and began studying the matter seriously. Half an hour later, he finally understood the storage of 4-dimensional attributes. Simply put, it was like having a power bank at peak condition. When he felt tired or fatigued, he could retrieve a portion of the 4-dimensional attributes to replenish his state, maintaining peak performance to face crises. These values could not permanently enhance the body. His own maximum 4-dimensional attributes remained the same, unchanged. Why can't it be permanent? Su Wanli muttered. If he hadn't known the Tun mouse could store four-dimensional attributes, he wouldn't have had any other thoughts. But now that he knew, his mind started working. Tun mouse, you don't want to lose your host and be homeless, do you? He looked at the thick fog outside, feeling a severe lack of confidence. That monster outside is no simple thing. If it sets its sights on me, I'm basically dead for sure. If you don't enhance my physical abilities, I don't know how many days it'll last. This wasn't an exaggeration. In fact, Su Wanli had felt a sense of being watched since last night. Even walking with a dozen college students, he felt extremely unsafe. No response. Su Wanli sighed. Store. Whether it could be permanent or not, it didn't take up storage space, so storing it was the right move. Ding, storage complete. 10 days for one-fold return. Detected first-time storage of a special medium. Return grants permanent enhancement. Return time shortened to 3 days. Huh. Su Wanli was stunned. Then joy surged within him. The Tun mouse didn't specify how many times the values would be returned, but he was still ecstatic. Facing the unknown and other trapped people, a bit more strength meant a bit more hope of survival. 3 days he could afford to wait. At a little past 7, while there's snow outside, Lin Xiaoling saw the snow through the window, her drowsiness vanishing. Excitedly, she pulled up her female companions and boyfriends, grabbed toiletries, and headed toward the service area hall. Of course, they had to wash up and put on makeup before taking photos. They're uppy. Hearing the commotion, Su Wanli threw off his quilt, quickly got off the bus, opened the luggage compartment, grabbed his plastic bucket and handbag, and headed to the hall. He had to shower before putting on new clothes. It was his ritual. SSS. The tap water in winter was freezing. Especially splashing it on bit by bit, it numbed his scalp and made his skin feel like it was burning. Su Wanli gritted his teeth and rinsed off, then quickly put on the thermal underwear. It fit perfectly. The moment he wore it, his body felt warm. However, the item he was most satisfied with was the antibacterial boxer briefs. They felt like swimming freely in air. Incredibly comfortable. It doesn't feel cold outside either. Whether it was psychological or not, Su Wanli walked out of the hall letting the cold wind hit his face, but felt no chill. His hands and feet were also warm. Looking at the people inside the hall, they were all huddled in corners. At that moment, a wave of happiness welled up inside him. The roadside ornamental trees were coated in a thin layer of crystal, and the shallow puddles on the path had frozen into ice. A few southern girls rose early, excitedly taking their phones outside to snap photos as mementos. But soon they lost their leisurely mood, pulling their jackets tight and shivering as they hurried back to the bus with chattering lips. The temperature was a few degrees below zero. Their clothing was insufficient to ward off the cold. Hiss-ha! From the driver's seat, Su Wanli scrolled through news online, catching a glimpse of a tall figure approaching with a hissing, hawing breath. Curious, he looked up. The girl was Yu Sahan, without makeup in the morning. Her skin was clearly good, fair and blemish-free, with earrings shaped like small beer bottles on her lobes. Her face was an oval shape, a bit plump, not stunning at first glance, yet it exuded an inexplicable warmth and approachability, the kind of enduring beauty that grows more comfortable and pleasing the longer you look. So cold. Yu Sahan didn't notice the man. The big boy's dazed stare. Her cheeks were flushed red from the cold. She occasionally stamped her feet and breathed warm air into her palms. Quite endearing. Beer bottle earrings. Su Wanli was slightly surprised. In his memory, only girls with a cool style wore such accessories. Good morning. Yu Sahan nodded. She seemed to always maintain basic courtesy toward strangers. Good morning. Su Wanli nodded back, withdrew his gaze, plugged his phone to charge, and opened a browser to search for recent news. Recently, due to heavy fog, numerous incidents of theft, robbery, and assault have occurred across various regions. According to relevant research reports, the fog blanketing the globe contains an unknown substance with a certain level of infectivity. The basic reproduction number has yet to be calculated. Please ensure you take precautionary measures. Carriers of the unknown substance exhibit violent tendencies and are highly aggressive. These reports drew widespread attention from netizens. Infectious, violent tendencies, highly aggressive. Wasn't that just zombies? The R0 value had not yet been determined. If the R0 value was less than or equal to 1, it meant the unknown substance couldn't spread widely and would gradually diminish over time until it disappeared. Holy crap! A virus in the fog. Then aren't we all infected by breathing? This thing is probably like the flu. Some get infected, others don't. Whoopee! No class so awesome. An invincible jungle king needs a support with a nice voice. Anyone up for a duo? Thanks but no thanks. I'm at school, do a queuing with a senior. Pick. Is the guy upstairs for real? I'm 18, please include me. Damn, am I the only one working overtime at the office? Nope, my dog's working overtime too. Pick. After browsing the news, Su Wanli frowned. Was that woman turned into a monster by the unknown substance in the fog? The key point was that the monster was infectious. This made him think of the drunkard who had been attacked. Had the drunkard turned into a monster hunting down drivers and passengers in the service area, just like the woman. If so, the number of monsters would grow and the survivors would dwindle. As one side flourished and the other declined, their chances of survival grew slimmer. I wonder how long the infection period is. Wanli's expression turned serious. He guessed the infection time wasn't short, otherwise most people in the service area would already be dead or turned into monsters. A longer infection period gave everyone a chance to think of countermeasures and maneuver. Let's go to the hall for breakfast. Seeing the college students in the back rows fully dressed and heading out, Wanli stopped overthinking. He quickly grabbed his phone and the claw hammer, following them step by step toward the service area hall. Another day of observation should confirm his suspicions. If not, he would find another way to raise everyone's alert. So many people. Inside the hall, the snail noodle shop and the burger joint were packed. Every seat outside the doors was taken. The breakfast shop had even hung a sold-out sign with 2 weary employees inside closing up. In contrast, the fast food restaurant across the way was deserted. A few young employees dozed off in boredom. Brother Su, good morning. Liang Yukai approached with a smile to greet him. He was in a very good mood. The drivers and passengers, sensing a food crisis and unwilling to waste their hard-bought instant noodles and self-heating hot pots, had flocked to the food outlets to spend, depleting their inventory faster than he had anticipated. In just one night, the breakfast shop had shut down. Barring any surprises, the other food outlets would close tonight or tomorrow, leaving only his fast food restaurant as the sole survivor. Good morning, Boss Liang. Wanli nodded in response. He didn't feel like eating a full meal so early. He went to the snail noodle shop next door, ordered a bowl of noodles with 2 fried eggs, and bought half a dozen raw eggs from the server at the price of fried eggs. Raw eggs? The server thought she had misheard. Yeah, I heard raw eggs have some magical benefits, so I want to. Young man, our raw eggs aren't pasteurized. We're not responsible if you get sick. Are you sure you want them raw? I'm sure. Wanli nodded firmly. He wasn't actually going to eat them raw. When it came to food, except for some greens, he didn't accept anything undercooked. All right. The server, with a strange expression, fetched half a dozen raw eggs, entered the price of 6 fried eggs on the register, and signaled Wanli to pay. The price was the same as yesterday, no increase. Wanli paid with his phone, took the 6 raw eggs and a steaming bowl of snail noodles, and sat down at an empty table. He looked around, but didn't find the man targeted by the monster. He might be dead, or he might still be asleep. Looks like everyone didn't rest well. His gaze swept over the customers in the hall. Their faces were pallid, with noticeable puffiness under their eyes and reddened noses. They coughed occasionally or blew their noses. The few who were injured slumped in their seats, utterly without appetite. However, no one mentioned anything about the monster. Have you found Fong Yuan? In the hallway of the hall, a few college students looked worried. Fong Yuan hadn't returned all night. They thought he had stayed in the hall to rest, so they didn't pay it much mind. But after searching several times without finding him, they grew concerned. Fong Yuan. Stop shouting, Fong Yuan isn't in the hall. A dozen people gathered in the hallway, looking around and calling out loudly, quickly drawing the attention of those nearby. Many drivers and passengers watched, curious about what was happening with the students. A woman with a pleasant demeanor stepped forward. Are you looking for a companion too? Yu Sahan frowned, a sense of foreboding rising in her heart. Yes. The woman's tone was somewhat urgent. Last night my boyfriend came to the hall for dinner, but he hadn't returned after more than 2 hours. I got worried and called him several times, but no one answered. I went out to look for him, searched several times, but couldn't find him anywhere. He wasn't at the gas station either. Having brought few clothes, and the night being cold, she hadn't joined her boyfriend for dinner in the hall last night. Instead, she had asked him to eat, and then pack a portion to bring back. Unexpectedly, once separated, he was nowhere to be found. Are you looking for someone? Before Yu Sahan and her group could speak, another young man with a panicked expression approached. The young man held his phone, the screen displaying a photo of a woman. This is my girlfriend. She went out to use the restroom last night and disappeared. If you're searching for people, could you also look for her? Inside the hall, aside from the 20+ people who had arrived at the service area on foot and stayed overnight, most of the others had cars parked in the lot. These people came to the hall to eat during the day and returned to their cars at night to rest. The cars had air conditioning to ward off the cold. The only inconvenience was using the restroom. Men could easily solve the issue with an empty bottle or by the roadside, but women had to go to the service area. With the heavy fog and poor lighting at night, a round trip sometimes took over an hour. Since people couldn't be found quickly, no one thought the worst. It wasn't until dawn, when they heard that more than one person had gone missing, that they belatedly realized something was wrong. How about we create a group chat? Yu Sahan suggested. In just a few minutes, several people had said they couldn't contact their companions, indicating that the number of missing people was far more than a few. Creating a group chat for searching would facilitate communication and information exchange. All right, everyone can post their photos in the group, and we'll search together. It's best to have others join too. Many hands make light work. Exactly. The group quickly established a chat named Search for the Missing. They posted photos and basic information of the missing people in the group, then went to recruit others, inviting more to join the search chat. The men formed teams to search outside, some going forward along the road, others backward, expanding the search area as much as possible. One of our classmates is missing, could you? All right. Wanli, without waiting for Sahan to finish, took out his phone and scanned the QR code. He had been paying attention all along. Upon learning that they had created a group chat to post photos and information of the missing, he joined without hesitation. Thank you. Watching Wanli earnestly browsing the missing person's information, Sahan's impression of him improved even more. After politely thanking him, she walked toward the others. Missing. Seated by the window, Wanli scrolled to a familiar photo, his gaze sharpening. It was a photo of a man and a woman with a beauty filter applied, but he instantly recognized the man as the one who had been targeted by the monster last night. If the number of missing people represents the number of monster attacks, it's impossible that no one noticed, right? The parking lot wasn't very large, and there were over 100 people. If that monster had attacked drivers and passengers multiple times in one night, even with the cover of thick fog and rain, it couldn't have left no trace. Someone knows, but isn't speaking up. Wanli put down his phone and scanned the people remaining in the hall. Since they knew there was a monster outside, they certainly wouldn't go out. My. Before long, Wanli's gaze fell on a figure in the farthest corner of the hall. That person was wearing a hood, limbs curled up, body twitching occasionally. Highly abnormal. Around 4 in the afternoon, the sky outside gradually darkened. The teams that had gone out to search returned, their faces full of exhaustion, lips purple from the cold. How did it go? Did you find anyone? Are they injured and unable to come back? Before the search teams could even steady themselves, many people crowded around to ask. As they spoke, some stood on tiptoe to look outside, hoping to spot familiar figures in the thick fog. Unfortunately, their hopes were dashed. We split into 2 teams. One team went 3 kilometers forward along the road, the other 3 kilometers backward. We searched the vehicles on the road, the drainage ditches on both sides, the ditches, small woods, and other areas. No sign of any living person. The leading man said in a deep voice. During this outing, they had scoured every possible hiding spot. They crawled through bushes and ditches, their clothes soaked by the rain, freezing them so much they couldn't speak a complete sentence. But still no trace was found. Did you go to the tunnel, eh? A middle-aged bald driver spoke with a look of recollection. I'm a full-time ride-hailing driver, very familiar with the highway sections in Guangdong and Guangxi. There's a long tunnel a few kilometers ahead. Could the missing people have taken shelter in the tunnel to rest? A tunnel. Those who had lost hope suddenly saw a glimmer of light again. The Guangdong and Guangxi regions are mountainous with many rivers, and highway sections have tunnels of varying lengths every 10 or so kilometers. The signal is poor in tunnels. If those people had taken shelter from the rain in a tunnel, it was indeed possible they couldn't receive calls. Wait, didn't my brother-in-law go out with you? Why hasn't he come back? A woman around 25 or 6 spoke, her lips trembling. Your brother-in-law. Everyone looked at each other in confusion. Had they lost someone? Why hadn't they noticed at all? Yes. The woman, sensing a bad premonition, her voice trembled, more on the verge of emotional collapse. He's wearing a yellow down jacket, about 167 meters tall, with black-rimmed glasses. I remember him. Upon hearing the description, someone from the search team immediately responded. I was searching the drainage ditch with him. We just got back to the corridor, and he was still behind me. We were chatting and complaining about the weather. How could he not have come back? Could he be in the restroom? There's no one in the restroom. A person who had just used it shook their head. At that moment, a chill ran through the hearts of those who had gone out. Right under the noses of over a dozen people, someone had vanished without a trace. Could it be? He got lost. A woman said hesitantly. Getting lost isn't losing your soul. In the corner of the hall, a man in a hood whose body occasionally trembled finally spoke in a low voice. You should send people to look in the gully behind the parking lot. There might be clues. A gully. The faces of the crowd turned grim. They were searching for people, not bodies. Who in their right mind would go down into a gully for no reason? Last night around 2 in the morning. Ignoring their grim expressions, the man began recounting his experience from the previous night. I went to the greenbelt behind the parking lot to relieve myself, and vaguely heard a woman screaming for help. At first I thought it was a couple fooling around, but the sound was too desperate. As he said this, his body visibly shuddered. The fog was too thick to see, so I turned on my phone's flashlight. Then I saw a figure in a twisted posture crouching on the ground, gnawing on a woman. It looked just like a zombie eating someone in the movies. I was terrified. I turned off the flashlight, crawled under a car, and dared not make a sound. I didn't dare come back until someone passed by at dawn. After hearing this, everyone noticed that the man's clothes were soaking wet. No wonder he kept shivering. Behind the parking lot, the Korean man, who had been listening as if it were a story, couldn't sit still. He stood up immediately and asked urgently, "Is the place you mentioned near the charging station canopy?" His newly purchased Panamera was parked behind the parking lot under the charging station canopy. If there really were zombies, what would happen to his car? Why? Wait a moment. A woman tremblingly extended her hand, pointing toward the door outside. The twisted figure you mentioned, is it like that? Outside the hall, a figure crawling on all fours like an animal caught everyone's attention. Ah! The man in the hood subconsciously turned his head. When he saw that figure, he let out a terrified scream, his body involuntarily retreating. Perhaps overwhelmed by fear, he stumbled and fell to the ground, but ignoring the scrapes on his knees and elbows, he scrambled away from the figure. Whooshed! The others were not foolish. Seeing the hooded man so frightened, they too stepped back, distancing themselves from the strange figure outside. The sky was dim and the fog was thick. The indoor light seeped through the glass door, casting a faint glow outside. In that weak light, they barely made out the figure's posture. Crawling on all fours with almost no sound, its head twisted sideways at an unnatural angle, as if listening to the commotion in the hall. Over 100 people in the hall dared not breathe. Their nerves were taut, eyes fixed on the monster outside. Facing the unknown, their every move was governed by instinct. Drip, drip. Raindrops fell from the eaves. The monster slowly climbed the steps, approaching the door. Everyone's heartstrings tightened to the breaking point. As the monster emerged from the fog and stepped into the light under the eaves, they finally saw its true form. On the monster's forehead was a patch of skin, bleached and peeling from the rain. Its eyes rolled upward, showing no pupils, and the skin exposed outside its clothes was utterly bloodless. It looked nothing like a living person. A zombie. They finally understood why the hooded man had called it a zombie. All its features were eerily similar to those of a zombie. But don't zombies attack people on sight? Hey! Just as everyone held their breath, a discordant voice shattered the silence. Hey! The sudden sound startled everyone. They stared at the monster outside in terror for a long moment. Seeing the monster undisturbed, they let out a long sigh of relief. Many turned to look at Guru Ajia, who had spoken, their eyes filled with anger and resentment. With over 100 lives at stake, how dare she speak so casually? I'm calling you. Guru Ajia ignored the stares. She lifted her chin, looking at Su Wanli, who was hiding at the back with one foot on the staircase to the second floor, and said matter-of-factly, "Aren't you carrying a hammer? Go check it out. You want me to go out?" Su Wanli was taken aback, thinking he had misheard. The woman outside was clearly not normal. At a time like this, someone was asking him to go out. Yes. Seeing the monster still hadn't entered, Guru Ajia breathed a heavy sigh of relief, her tone growing more impatient. "You always carry a hammer around, so you must be a repairman, right? They'll give you 10,000 yuan to go to the door and drive that thing away." She had been terrified too. Unable to bear the suffocating tension any longer, with her bladder threatening to give way, she had to speak to distract herself. After saying this, Guru Ajia turned and said something in a foreign language to the Korean man. The Korean man immediately unzipped his wallet. Without counting, he pulled out a stack of bills and handed it over. "Here, take the money. Go out and drive her away." Su Wanli couldn't be bothered with the two idiots. What, not enough? Park Hyun-young pulled out another stack estimated at 20 to 30,000 yuan. "Take the money and get it done." The two had targeted Su Wanli for a reason. They had had a minor conflict earlier in the parking lot. Moreover, they needed someone to act as bait. Whether it was a real zombie or not, one test would tell. Su Wanli narrowed his eyes, staring at the back of Guru Ajia's head. His grip on the claw hammer tightened. "Ahem, let's observe first. Don't act rashly." Liang Yukai cleared his throat. The situation did call for someone to step forward and test the monster. But no one volunteered, simply because they didn't want to offend anyone. Guru Ajia and Park Hyun-young already looked down on their compatriots and didn't care about offending anyone. They only wanted to save themselves, indifferent to others' lives. "There's another monster over there." Suddenly, someone pointed to the right. Another figure had appeared there unnoticed. Unlike the first, this one stood upright and did not climb the steps, remaining still in the fog. "There's one over there too. Heavens, how many zombies are there? Wait, that looks like my boyfriend." The well-dressed woman stared blankly at one of the figures, her eyes quickly reddening. She had been with her boyfriend for 4 years, and they were about to get married. This trip back to Qinglai was to meet his parents. Another one. The woman's grief drew no concern from the crowd. Everyone's attention was fixed outside. Now 6 or 7 monsters surrounded the area. One had climbed the steps and blocked the door, while the rest stood motionless in the fog. "No, that's not a zombie," a sharp-eyed staff member said, his voice trembling. "That's a person. He's walking toward the hall." A figure approached from the direction of the gas station. It seemed to be a gas station worker coming to use the restroom, but before he could get close, the crawling monster on the steps suddenly turned, lunging like a leopard straight at the unsuspecting worker. The other monsters reacted more slowly, taking several seconds to turn and follow. In a single instant, the worker was tackled by the monster, his scream cut short. Soon the monsters dragged the corpse into the thick fog. "Close the door." After a brief shock, someone shouted to shut the door, but no one dared to approach. Su Wanli looked at the open door, hesitating whether to risk running back to the bus. But the thought was dismissed as soon as it arose. There was food in the hall. If he could endure 2 more days, the hoarding space would return permanent 4-dimensional stats. Then returning to the bus or hiking to the nearest city would give him a better chance of survival. Damn it. Time's running out. We have 2 choices now: either close the door and seal the glass with cardboard boxes, or die together. Every second of hesitation adds to the danger. Make up your minds quick. Liang Yukai gritted his teeth. The fast food shop faced the door directly. If it wasn't closed, they might be the first to die. But he didn't dare to close it alone. Besides, this wasn't just his problem. He's right. Yes, we need to close the... Several men voiced their agreement. Then everyone sprang into action. Wanli didn't hold back either. He joined Liang Yukai in moving obstacles to block the door, while the weaker women collected cardboard boxes from the convenience store and used double-sided tape or clear tape to seal the glass. However, some stayed far behind, hiding. Damn it. These people should be thrown out to feed the zombies. Liang Yukai cursed in frustration. I support you, Wanli said with a smile. He glanced at the dozen or so people hiding in the back, and when his gaze fell on the petite Guruejiao, a flicker of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. He would remember today's grudge. It was past 8 in the evening. Everyone sat in silence, scattered in various corners. Having witnessed the monster's attack on humans firsthand, their hearts were weighed down with oppression. Now it was not just a matter of whether rescue would come at difficulties such as food. The biting cold and the monsters suffocated them, and their mental defenses showed clear signs of collapse. The only good news, it seemed, was that those monsters wouldn't come inside. Everyone rest for the night. Try to find a spot far from the main entrance. Someone whispered a reminder. Monsters lurked outside, making it impossible to leave the hall. And the hall's space was limited, barely accommodating over 100 people. Most importantly, the only places to rest in the hall were uncomfortable tables and chairs with no air conditioning for warmth, let alone soft beds and quilts. For them, it was a torment of both body and mind. Need to use the restroom. Wanli had been sitting and observing all day. Now that the doors were sealed and everyone knew about the monsters, there was no need to keep watch. Entering the men's room, he encountered an acquaintance. Wanli walked straight to the urinal next to him. Park Hyenyang, who was relieving himself, noticed someone nearby, but paid it no mind. However, upon hearing a sound like a gushing faucet, he couldn't help but glance over. That glance made him blurt out instinctively, "Holy shit." Park Hyenyang's expression was exaggerated, as if he had seen something incredible, his eyes wide open. You must be an adult, right?" His tone was filled with envy. That downward glance made the wealthy Park Hyenyang feel a sense of inferiority for the first time. Standing up, it wasn't even as tall as the others. When lying down, the difference was too vast. "I suppose so," Wanli replied calmly, inwardly feeling a surge of smug satisfaction. During his time working at the factory, after using the restroom together once, his co-workers never invited him again. Sometimes when they bumped into each other in the restroom, they would stand several urinals apart. "It's you, eh?" Only then did Park Hyenyang realize the person beside him was Wanli. His expression changed and his envy turned to jealousy. But then he remembered Wanli had no girlfriend, while his own girlfriend was petite and adorable with a sweet voice and beautiful face. Comparing the two, his mood instantly brightened. "Oomph." Park Hyenyang let out a proud snort and silently walked away. There was no way he was going to relieve himself nearby. Even standing 2 or 3 urinals apart wasn't enough. He turned sideways to block the view before daring to unbuckle his belt. A lowly thing, not worthy of standing next to him. "Oh, that feels good." Wanli shuddered, feeling refreshed, and walked out. Passing by a short, scrawny man under 1.6 meters, he patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "Kid, remember to wash your hands after using the restroom." "Ish, you didn't wash your hands." A flustered voice came from behind. Wanli waved his hand without looking back, quite nonchalant. After washing his hands, he happened to run into Guruejia. Admittedly, aside from her personality, Guruejia's figure and face were top-notch. She was petite, yet possessed impressive assets coupled with a delicate demeanor. Holding her and going all out, it would be unimaginably pleasurable. "Get lost," Guruejia snapped coldly. She detested disrespectful gazes, especially from those labeled as low class. In the past, if someone had looked her up and down like that, she would have gone home and taken a bath for over half an hour until she felt clean again. Wanli gave a faint smile and turned away. In a couple of days, when a food crisis hit the service area and paper money lost its value, he hoped these two could still maintain their superior attitude. Otherwise, revenge would lack much of its fun. "Big sister, do you have employee dormitories at your convenience store?" In a corner of the hall, a man holding a child's hand pulled the cashier lady aside to a less crowded spot, lowering his voice to plead, "Look, I have a family. There's no way we can sleep in the hall tonight. Can you spare some space in the dorm for us?" "No way." The cashier refused without hesitation. No kidding. She knew exactly how terrifying the monsters outside were. Letting others into the employee dorm at a time like this was like opening the floodgates of a dam. It would only attract more people. Big sister, please have mercy. My son is only 5 years old. The man's voice was choked with tears. He pulled out his phone, his tone almost begging. How about this? He'll pay rent. 1,000 a night, okay? It's not about the money. 2,000. You? 5,000. The man seemed to lose his mind, raising the price each time without the cashier agreeing. He could endure sleeping on the first floor, but his wife and child could not. The first floor hall offered no safety whatsoever. It was cold and cramped. One could only sleep slumped over a table. There was no way to rest properly, and they didn't dare to. Surviving 1 or 2 nights was doable, but any longer would be unbearable. Their only way out was to rent a dorm from the staff. The second floor was relatively safer. At least they could get some. All right. The cashier couldn't resist the temptation of money and agreed. At present, information about the monsters hadn't spread online, and no one knew if the monsters outside were a global disaster. Even if some guessed it might be the apocalypse. But guesses were just guesses. Faced with a fortune, a chance to achieve financial freedom, those who had lived in poverty their whole lives preferred tangible benefits over vague worries. Thank you. Thank you. The man was overjoyed at the cashier's agreement and immediately transferred the money to her. He paid for 5 nights at once. He also said he would renew when the time came and asked her not to rent it to anyone else. Don't worry. With 2,500 in her account, the cashier's face broke into a genuine smile. That sum was equivalent to over half a year's income for her. But remembering that there was a sick colleague in the dorm, she added a word of caution. I have a colleague who caught a cold, so you. It's fine, it's normal to catch a cold in this weather. The man waved his hand. Under these circumstances, having a place to stay was enough. He couldn't afford to be picky. Several other passengers nearby, seeing the deal, followed suit and approached other staff members to rent employee dorms on the second floor at exorbitant prices. But the other staff were much shrewder. Knowing the dorms were in high demand, they directly asked for 5,000 or more. Anything less was not up for discussion. 5,000 was enough for a 5-star hotel. But here it might not even secure a cramped employee dorm. 10,000 a night. At the counter of a burger shop, Wanli looked at the server inside and bid 10,000. He had over 100,000 in his account. Renting a dorm was the only way to spend it. Deal. The server didn't haggle and agreed readily. He took out his phone and opened the payment QR code. Just as they were about to complete the transaction, a familiar, arrogant voice interrupted them. 50,000. We'll pay 50,000 for the entire dorm. Guru Ajia seemed determined to challenge Wanli. She walked straight to the counter and addressed the burger shop attendant. 50,000 to rent your entire dormitory. 50,000. The number made the attendant's heartbeat quicken involuntarily. 50,000. That was more than his entire disposable income for a year. But he had just reached an agreement with Wanli and was about to transfer the money. Backing out now. The attendant glanced at the sheephorn hammer hanging from Wanli's waist, rubbed the back of his head, and wondered if wearing a helmet to sleep at night would withstand a couple of blows. Wait, no, he didn't have a helmet. Agree to her. A younger colleague leaned in and whispered a few words into the attendant's ear. The attendant's eyes lit up. Fine, 50,000 a night, it's yours. Transfer the money. Upon hearing this, Guru Ajia calmly pulled out her phone, inwardly breathing a sigh of relief. The living conditions on the second floor were safer than the first, and she wouldn't have to share space with some uncouth lowlifes. Spending a bit more was worth it. Brother, don't rush. The attendant waiting for the transfer caught a glimpse of Wanli unclipping the hammer from his waist and felt a tremor of fear. The burger shop was adjacent to the fast food joint. He had accidentally overheard what Wanli said to Liang Yukai that day, and the news had spread. 10 years of reform through labor. That meant the crime was serious. Brother, come with me for a moment. The young attendant stepped forward, quickly signaling Wanli to move to a secluded corner to talk. Wanli said nothing, just used the hammer to scratch his back. He wasn't a maniac. He wouldn't just go around bashing people's heads in. He had just felt an itch on his back and used the hammer to scratch it. Speak. It's not that we want rent to you, but there's a better dormitory on the second floor. Sweat beaded on the young man's forehead as he explained cautiously. The Malay Mountain service area wasn't large, and the hall had an open design. Consequently, there were only 6 dormitories for the staff, 1 for the burger shop, 1 for the snail noodle shop, 1 for the fast food joint, 1 for the breakfast shop, 1 for the convenience store, and 1 for the gas station. Of the 6, the gas station dormitory was the best. It was a 4-person room of nearly 40 square meters with a small balcony, a private bathroom, and a toilet. The other 5 dormitories were basically 6-person rooms with no private facilities, requiring the use of the public bathroom on the second floor for showers and toilet needs, far less convenient than the gas station dorm. There are monsters outside. The gas station staff definitely can't come back. Big brother, you can stay there for free. Why, oi? Wanli raised an eyebrow. A bed in the second floor dorms was going for 5,000. Who would willingly give up such a golden opportunity to make money? He wasn't naive enough to think the other party was acting out of fear or guilt in revealing the empty room. Brother, we want to stick with you. The young man was frank. Ordinarily, he would keep his distance from someone like Su Wanli, maintaining an attitude of non-discrimination and non-contact. But things were different now. The 100+ people in the hall were showing signs of losing control. Once someone started a riot, it would come down to choosing sides. Currently, the fast food staff and Fire Snakes group were clearly with Liang Yukai. The drivers and passengers on the first floor also had a leader, the man who led the daytime search party, Xie Zhongshu. They were also the largest and most troublesome faction. The staff's stance was somewhat wavering. If they wanted to rent out the dorms at a high price, they couldn't side with Xie Zhongshu. Liang Youcai, on the other hand, was miserly, who sticking with him meant giving up a portion or even most of the profits. Who would be willing to do that? One by one, they were ruled out, leaving Su Wanli as the one with no deep conflicts of interest. Their faith in Su Wanli's deterrent power was absolute. When Guru Ajia suggested sending Su Wanli out to explore, why didn't anyone in the hall echo the idea? Was it because they didn't want to? Of course not. Those people weren't unwilling to agree. They were afraid of making an enemy of Su Wanli. In a time of crumbling order, who wouldn't fear being targeted by a suspected murderer? Stick with me. Su Wanli's eyes flickered. He wasn't really a hardened criminal. He didn't know how to go about forming. The reason he seemed unapproachable was simply that he had a fierce face and had been in a lot of fights, inadvertently building a reputation that had yielded the current effect. But having a few people with him would provide an extra layer of security when going out or doing things. Brother, rest assured, we won't use your name to cause trouble, and we won't ask you to solve our problems. We just hope that if someone fights over the dorms, you'll step in to stop it. The young man felt uneasy under Su Wanli's gaze, a chill running down his spine. He wasn't an idiot. He had no desire to be tied to Su Wanli or to have any deep interaction with him. To put it bluntly, this deal was trading a bed for a shield. Stop it. Su Wanli felt a pang of regret, but also a sense of relief. He had indeed considered taking on a few expendable people, but the thought of doing so to people he had no grudge against filled him with guilt. He couldn't be a good man, but he wasn't thoroughly evil either. Su Wanli realized his way of handling things wasn't suited for the apocalypse and sighed helplessly. He felt he needed to learn from others. Fine, but I have a condition. Su Wanli agreed. He needed to access supplies from his hoarding space, and the hall was certainly less convenient than a dormitory. The hoarding space was his greatest secret for survival in the apocalypse, and he couldn't let anyone discover it. What condition? The young man's mind raced. Was this guy also eyeing the high rental fees and wanting a cut? If so, he'd have to reconsider who to cooperate. I want the gas station staff dormitory all to myself. All to yourself? The young man was startled, then quickly relaxed. As long as it wasn't about taking a cut of the money. However, this wasn't a decision he could make alone. He asked Su Wanli to wait and went to consult the other staff members. Most agreed immediately. 2 gas station employees who were off duty, however, objected. Give away their dormitory for free. No way. Who didn't want to cash in on this? It's not free. The staff from our shops will compensate you. Then I want 50,000 a night. 50,000? Are you crazy? Your dormitory rents for 50,000 as a whole. Our dorm is bigger and better. Why can't we rent it for 50,000? Do you think they're all millionaires? Then he'll go to them and see which dorm they'd rather rent for 50,000. Damn it. You've got to be alive to spend the money. Whoever cuts off my income, I'll fight to the death. Let's see who's luckier. There are only 2 of you gas station employees left. 50,000 split 2 ways is 25,000 each. Are you sure you want to risk your life for 25,000? The staff from various shops huddled together, arguing in hushed tones. With their own interests at stake, no one was willing to back down. The young man from the burger shop was utterly exasperated. He finally understood why these people were only working at a service area. Curious passengers and drivers nearby eavesdropped. The young man dared not raise his voice, suppressing his anger as he explained. All right, our burger shop's dormitory will contribute 10,000, and the rest of you can pool together the remaining 10,000 to make up the difference. No way. It's not my dormitory, why should I pay? The young man's emotions nearly spiraled out of. They were willing to cover the bulk of the cost, yet the other shops refused to chip in a mere 1,000 or 2,000 each. He demanded, do you think the dormitory can be rented out for many days? 3 days? 5 days? What if the people downstairs also offer a high price to rent? Would you rent it out or not? Not renting offends people, renting also offends people. So what do we do? Resorting to violence at every turn. Will you fight? Or will you fight? Why is no one speaking up? Then let me say it. The best solution is to put one person forward. If others want to rent, they can ask that person. See? Problem solved. Why cling to petty gains? His words were blunt. The staff members, though not highly educated, were not lacking in intelligence. The shops in the hall had space to sleep on the floor, so renting out the dormitory for some extra cash was no issue. The real problem was not scarcity, but inequality. With over 100 people crammed into the hall, and only a dozen or so staying in the second-floor dormitory, the stark disparity would inevitably lead to trouble sooner or later. Among their group, only the burger shop had a young man, the rest were middle-aged or elderly. If trouble arose, who would bear the burden? You can pay if you want, but I'm not giving a cent. A middle-aged man from the breakfast shop said nonchalantly. He turned to the young man and lectured him like a junior. Xiaoqin, you're still young and inexperienced, easily trusting strangers. Can that person you mentioned really handle things? Probably not, right? It's not worth spending tens of thousands on insurance for him. What about the rest of you? Qinbo was done wasting words. He looked at the others, waiting for their stance. We're with Uncle Dong. Xiaoqin, we trust you. Yes, Xiaoqin supports you. Except for the 4 breakfast shop workers, the other shop staff chose to believe Qinbo. The 2 gas station employees remained silent. Qinbo's earlier words had awakened them. With monsters lurking outside thick fog and the highway blocked, staying in the hall meant avoiding conflicts at all costs to prevent injuries. In the current situation, injuries would go untreated. 20,000. Qinbo looked at the 2 gas station workers and continued his persuasion. Until the authorities quell this disaster, we'll compensate you 20,000 per night, and the burger shop will save you a spot to rest at night. Deal? All right. The 2 gas station workers exchanged glances and nodded in agreement. 20,000 per night meant 10,000 each. They were satisfied with the price. Having a place to sleep at night without worrying about trouble was a good deal. Refusing now might ruin everything. Well, pay 15,000 and the remaining 5,000. Qinbo paused, looking at the other shop workers. Can you all chip in for the remaining 5,000? No problem. Everyone agreed to the plan. Qinbo paid the bulk and still made over 10,000. The others split the 5,000 each, contributing only a couple hundred, a trivial amount compared to their earnings. A win-win. What a fool with too much money. Bai Jidong sneered and shook his head. He disapproved of Qinbo's approach and felt somewhat irritated. Originally, with over a dozen service area staff united, couldn't they protect the dormitory rental business? Even if they couldn't, could sue Wanli alone. A claw hammer wasn't Thor's hammer. When push came to shove, anyone would fight. Let's go pack our things and sleep on the shop floor tonight. We'll need to bring the mattresses down. Of course, or we'll freeze at night. The 4 breakfast shop workers turned and left. Those with different paths cannot share the same goals. Qinbo and his group wanted to stay behind and collect money safely, while the others aimed to rent at the highest price for a big profit. In truth, if Guruajia hadn't lavishly spent 50,000 to book the dormitory, Bai Jidong wouldn't have looked down on a few thousand per night. But after seeing someone pay a fortune, settling for a few thousand was hard to swallow. Give me the dormitory keys, we'll go pack together later. Qinbo asked for the gas station dormitory key, not just one set. He took both the keys the employees carried and the spares. Let's go, bro. The 2 went up the stairs to the 2nd floor. The staff dormitories were above the restroom, arranged in 2 rooms. The gas station dormitory was the innermost room on the right of the stairwell, diagonally opposite the burger shop's dormitory, next to the snail noodle shops. The other 3 were on the left. Let's grab some stuff. The 2 gas station workers entered first, rummaging through their belongings. Su Wanli followed, surveying the room and facilities. The dormitory resembled a single room in an urban village, a steel door, 2 wooden bunk beds inside, and a small balcony for drying clothes about 5 or 6 square meters. The bathroom had a water heater, but the toilet was a bit unsightly. Aside from the dirty, squat toilet, everything else was decent. If the rest isn't yours, just toss it off the balcony. Okay. The 2 dragged suitcases and plastic buckets downstairs. Bro, I left the keys on the bed. Qinbo, who had been guarding the door, left the keys and headed back to pack his clothes and bedding. 3 meters. Su Wanli stood on the balcony, estimating the distance to the charging station canopy. 3 meters wasn't far. In an emergency, he could take a running start from the door and jump onto the canopy to escape. Not bad. Su Wanli grew more satisfied. The only downside was the public bathroom and toilet at the end of the corridor. The steel door's soundproofing was terrible. In the dead of night, anyone using the toilet or shower could be heard clearly. Footsteps, voices, even the sound of running water from the public bath amplified in the silence. For light sleepers, it would be torture. But Su Wanli didn't mind. His sleep quality was always good. If only I could bring food here. It was past 9 in the evening. The hall's glass windows were plastered with various papers and plastic bags. These assorted sheets piled in chaotic layers formed a barrier that blocked the view. From time to time, 1 or 2 screams echoed from outside. The piercing cries cut through the barrier, stabbing straight into the heart. People in the hall involuntarily shuddered, a wave of indescribable fear and dread surging within them. Those outside could not see in, just as those inside could not see out. This tormenting uncertainty, knowing monsters lurked outside yet unsure if they would break in, weighed heavily on everyone. I wonder if the glass door and tables outside can hold the monsters back. Sai, I shouldn't have rented out the dorm. You didn't say that when you were collecting the money. Now that you've got the cash, you're scared. Don't worry, our shop's rolling door is made of iron, very sturdy. The staff hiding in the shop curled up, the noises outside, keeping them from sleep. Sometimes they even felt a slight relief upon hearing screams. The silence was even more terrifying. At that moment, some regretted renting out the dorm. Putting themselves in danger for a few thousand yuan was hardly worth it. Yet others thought differently, believing a few thousand per night was too cheap. They should raise the price. Damn it. I want to stay on the second floor. If I can't sleep in the dorm, I'll sleep in the hallway. Anything but the hall. In the hall, a burly man, unable to bear the immense psychological pressure, stood up and headed for the stairs. His movement drew a crowd of equally terrified followers. How could anyone sleep with monsters just a pane of glass away? Every slight sound startled them awake, their nerves stretched taut. In such a state, enduring not just days, but even a single night, no, a single minute or second, was impossible. Besides, why should others get to stay on the second floor while they were stuck on the first? They could pay too. Right, if it comes to it, well, sleep in the second floor hallway. Let's go. Damn it. Anyone who dares stop me from going upstairs, I'll fight them. In less than half a minute, 20 to 30 people had gathered. They stormed up to the second floor, glanced left and right along the corridor, then split, some heading left, others right. A few simply found an empty spot to lie down or sat against the wall waiting for someone to knock and ask, "Does anyone have an extra bed or floor space? Just for one night." "Yes, we can pay. You guys haggle." "I'm grabbing a spot first." The leaders lowered their voices, asking through the iron doors. They had intended to knock rudely, but a shred of reason told them not to make too much noise. Monsters were outside. Sleep on the floor? How much are you paying? Those who had rented the dorms at high prices hesitated upon hearing the commotion. The beds in the dorm were singles, but they could squeeze in one or two more people. If the price was right, it might be negotiable. However, those willing to spend several thousand or even 10,000 yuan on a dorm bed on the first night were mostly wealthy individuals who didn't care about small change. They had no desire to share a cramped bed with a stranger for a few thousand yuan and put up with someone else's sleeping habits. They promptly locked the door. Why all the noise? In the breakfast shop dorm, Lin Xiaoling was chatting with her boyfriend downstairs. The clamor from the corridor made it hard for her to concentrate. She pouted and opened the door before anyone could stop her. The moment she did, she was startled by the crowd before her. 5 or 6 unfamiliar adult men blocked the doorway with more behind who couldn't squeeze through. Instinctively, she tried to shut the iron door. But the men outside were quick. They shifted their feet and wedged the door open, preventing it from closing. "What? Don't be afraid, we're not bad people. We just need a place to sleep. No, our dorm is all girls. We can't. Who cares about that at a time like this?" Their argument drew more attention. Seeing the door open, the crowd in the hallway scrambled frantically to push inside, as if entering the dorm would guarantee their safety. Ignoring the girls' desperate resistance, they forced the iron door open. Bang! The iron door slammed against the wall with a tremendous noise. The deafening sound jolted the nearly frantic men back to a sliver of reason. They stood frozen in place. After waiting half a minute without hearing the familiar screams from downstairs, they gradually relaxed. "You're not staff, you can't be on the second floor." Bai Jidong and a few others rushed upstairs. On one hand, they feared the monsters outside might be alerted by the noise and break in, prompting them to seek shelter early. On the other, they didn't want to lose their source of income. Cutting off someone's money was like killing their parents. Bai Jidong felt a surge of ruthlessness. He dragged the men blocking the dorm doorway into the hallway and demanded angrily, "They paid 30,000 for this dorm. What right do you have to force your way in?" "They'll pay 30,000 too." A man pulled out his phone without hesitation. "They'll pay 40,000. 40,100. 41,000. The men kept raising their bids. By now their psychological defenses had crumbled, money no longer mattered. 40,000. Hearing the offer, Bai Jidong's heart leaped. He was ecstatic inside. 40,000 per bed, and a dorm had 4 beds. That was 160,000. 160,000 a night. What more could he ask for? Bai Jidong didn't agree immediately. He thought a bidding war could drive the price even higher. Men die for wealth, birds die for food. He was destined to get rich. 41,000, any higher. 50,000. 50,000, damn it, 100,000. A hoarse roar. The breath caught in everyone's throat. 100,000 for a bed, for one night. That was truly going all out. Deal. Bai Jidong didn't care if the man was crazy, as long as the money came through, everything was fine. He pulled out his phone for the transfer. The short, stout, slightly balding, middle-aged man wasted no time. He took out his phone and transferred the money in several installments, then stepped past the crowd blocking the door and walked toward the dorm. Downstairs, some women huddled in corners, staring blankly at the parking lot. Cece. A faint call reached her ears. Very familiar. The woman stood up and looked toward under the flickering neon lights in the corner outside the side door corridor. A figure stood silently. Brother-in-law. The woman was stunned. Then a surge of joy welled up inside her. Her brother-in-law was alive. A clattering sound rang out as the tables and chairs propped against the glass door were knocked over. The noise of the furniture falling was especially jarring in the quiet hall. Everyone's nerves were already taut. Startled without warning, they instinctively sprang to their feet and scanned their surroundings warily. When their eyes landed on the woman who had pushed the furniture aside, their pupils contracted. "Hey, what are you doing?" Their hearts trembled. What was that woman doing? Was she insane? How could she move the tables and chairs blocking the glass door? How dare she move them? "My brother-in-law is outside," the woman said with conviction. She couldn't have mistaken. Though the voice came in fragments and sounded a bit strange, it was undoubtedly her brother-in-law. So she intended to open the door and let him in. "Stop!" Most of the people froze in place. They desperately wanted to stop the woman, but dared not approach, fearing the glass door would be opened before they could reach her, making them the next victims. So they shouted loudly, trying to snap her back to reason. A few people fled headlong toward the second floor without looking back. The stairwell on the second floor had a fire door, at least offering some safety. Several decisive individuals, however, charged forward without hesitation to tackle the woman. "Let me go. My brother-in-law is at the door. Let him in." "Shut up." On the second floor. "What are you doing?" Xiao Hao, along with several male classmates, rushed up with a fierce press. Their group of over a dozen classmates had pooled their money together, renting the breakfast shop's 4-person dormitory at 30,000 per night, paying 120,000 up front for 4 days. They had also agreed on the room assignments, letting the girls sleep at night while the boys returned during the day. They took turns resting. Now the boss was publicly auctioning off living spots and letting others move in. Wasn't that too outrageous? How? Seeing her boyfriend arrive, Lin Xiling's eyes reddened as she pouted pitifully. She had just been badly frightened by several strange men. Moreover, a short, balding, greasy man seemed about to enter the dormitory to stay with them, a group of girls. That was absolutely unacceptable. "It's okay." Xiao Hao pulled his girlfriend into his arms to comfort her. Then he turned his head to look at Bai Jidong, whose face was covered in fierce flesh, suppressing the anger in his heart. "What gives you the right to let him stay, eh?" "What gives me the right?" Bai Jidong laughed as if he had heard a funny joke. "The boss. Is that enough? So what if you're the boss? We've already rented the entire dormitory for 4 days. During the lease period, you have no right to rent it out to anyone else. Then he'll refund your money, or you'll have to pay more." "Damn it." Xiao Hao looked at the unscrupulous Bai Jidong, feeling deeply wronged. The man had no sense of contract, making Xiao Hao feel like a scholar meeting a soldier. But Xiao Hao knew clearly that he couldn't pick a fight with the other tenants. Otherwise, the conflict would shift, turning into a clash between them and the other renters, giving Bai Jidong an opportunity to profit from the chaos. And they definitely couldn't pay more. All of them were college students out on a trip. Each bringing close to 10,000 yuan was already a lot. They couldn't afford to add more money. Even if they could scrape together another 10 or 20,000, they couldn't give it. Otherwise, Bai Jidong's appetite would only grow, eventually reaching a point they couldn't satisfy until he found ways to drive them out. "Then refund the money. We won't rent anymore." Yu Sahan managed to stay calm. Several vibrant young girls sharing a dormitory with strange men. Wasn't that like putting a wolf in a sheepfold and betting it was a vegetarian? It was utterly absurd. Han, we can't give in." Lin Xiaoling puffed out her cheeks, looking defiant and ready to argue. Earlier, she had been too scared to stay in the back and hadn't noticed how greedy those men's gazes were. They were filled with primal desire. "Right." Xiao Hao voiced his agreement. But his reasoning differed from his girlfriend's. She was naive, thinking reason could solve things. He, however, saw deeper implications. In a chaotic environment devoid of order, Yu Sahan was targeted by ill-intentioned men, placing her in grave danger. No one knew how depraved men unrestrained by law could become. At present, only the dormitory offered some measure of safety. They couldn't give it up. "Boss." Xiao Hao took a few deep breaths and looked at the fierce-faced Bai Jidong. "If you want to rent out the dormitory, that's fine, but you'll have to wait until after 4 days. Otherwise, you'll be in breach of contract and owe triple compensation." "Kid, he rented 1 bed. He'll refund you 10,000. Squeeze into the other 3 beds, and don't make a big deal out of this. Understand?" Bai Jidong's face instantly darkened. "Compensation? Triple? What a joke. They should be grateful for the 10,000 refund. If not for the monsters outside, did they really think he was afraid of a few greenhorns?" "Fine." Xiao Hao said no more. He led 2 tall male classmates to the dormitory entrance, blocking the meter-wide iron door. Then he pulled out a collapsible baton hidden in his clothes and flicked it open with a sharp sound. Staring at Bai Jidong, he said sternly, "I'd like to see who you'll let in." Xiao Hao was clever. He didn't say no one could enter. Instead, he said Bai Jidong could let someone in, meaning whoever was willing to be Bai Jidong's pawn should step forward. This matter had always been between them and Bai Jidong. If they still didn't get it, they deserved to be used. "Damn brat, you're asking for trouble, aren't you?" Bai Jidong had a fiery temper. He rubbed his head, glanced around, and signaled the others in the dormitory. Several colleagues from the breakfast shop simply pretended not to see. Stepping forward now would definitely get them beaten. If they got injured, it was no longer about money, but about survival. Moreover, whether it was the 100,000 from before or the 120,000 Xiao Hao had transferred, none of them had received a single cent. Saying they'd split the money later was just treating them like children. You're the tenant. Seeing his colleagues were useless, Bai Jidong turned to the short, bald, greasy man who had spent 100,000. I've already rented you a bed. Handle the rest yourself. Do you even hear what you're saying? The short, fat man was displeased. Spending 100,000 for him to handle, what could he do? Step forward and get beaten. You took the money, but you won't do the job. I told you can move in. They're blocking the door. How am I supposed to move in? That's your problem. Damn it. The short, fat man glanced at the young man with the baton, then at the fierce-faced, middle-aged man. After a moment's hesitation, he chose the latter. He threw a sudden punch. Bang. It hit Bai Jidong square in the face. Bai Jidong was caught completely off guard. He never expected the short, fat man to strike without warning. He covered his bleeding nose and instinctively stepped back. But the corridor was too crowded for him to move away. Bang. Another punch came straight at him. Bai Jidong felt dizzy and instinctively shielded his head. Despite his fierce appearance and constant talk of fighting to the death, he had only been in a few schoolyard scraps and had no real experience in brawls. Fortunately, the short, fat man was equally inexperienced. After a few heavy punches, he was already panting heavily. Stop fighting. Don't fight anymore. Others in the corridor forcibly pulled the two apart. It wasn't out of kindness. Rather, the short, fat man always yelled vulgarities when he punched, coupled with Bai Jidong's desperate screams, creating a tremendous racket. Everyone worried it would attract the monsters and had to intervene. They've paid for 4 nights, so they should be allowed to stay for 4 nights. If you want to pay more to move into the dormitory, talk about it after 4 days. Xie Zhongsu, who had arrived upon hearing the commotion, stood in the middle to calm everyone. Having once claimed to be a retired boxer, his words carried some weight. In truth, even without his intervention, the others had no desire to keep causing trouble. If they could pay a high price to move into the dormitory, others could pay even more to kick them out. It was pointless. Damn it. Those 2 dormitories have empty spots. 2 4-person dorms. One has 2 people, the other just 1. Bai Jidong's eyes burned with resentment. Why was his dormitory the only one with trouble? Why weren't the employee dorms of other shops facing the same issue? Since they were all renting out, he shouldn't be the only one bullied. 1 person in a 4-person dorm. The crowd's recently quelled desires began to stir again. The breakfast shop's employee dormitory was overcrowded and full of women. Even if they harbored improper thoughts, they dared not cause a public scene. But now other employee dormitories had extra beds, giving them a chance to move in. If the occupant happened to be a in the dead of night, who knew what sparks might fly? The group refrained from approaching, immediately turning instead to cast a glance at Xie Zhongshu. Observing his impassive silence, they inferred his tacit consent. The men exchanged a knowing look before heading toward the dormitory at the end of the corridor. This time, however, their demeanor was notably more amicable. They knocked politely on the door. Knock, knock. Hello, could you open the door? Aish, get lost. The irate voice of Park Hyunyung rang out. During his afternoon bathroom break, he had been profoundly unsettled by Su Wanli. Now he was persistently cajoling his girlfriend into a duo queue, craving her praise to salvage his tattered ego through his gaming prowess, leaving him utterly indifferent to the commotion outside. Let's try another one. The moment they heard the Korean language, the group instantly deduced the occupants. These 2 were exceedingly wealthy. Realizing that offering to share the cost might not secure them a spot in the dormitory, they hesitated briefly before turning toward the gas station's employee quarters. Knock, knock. Open up in there. Toward their fellow countrymen, whom they knew well, the men's tone was far less. They demanded entry, prepared to employ a mix of persuasion and coercion to achieve their goal of moving into the dormitory. Who is it? Su Wanli's mood was foul. Inside the dormitory, a small table was laden with 2 hamburgers, some fries, several portions of Orlan-style chicken wings, fried drumettes, and over a dozen chicken nuggets. These provisions were a gift from Chinbo. With the fast food restaurant closed that afternoon, and the snail noodle shop and breakfast stall sold out, only the burger joint had food available. Chunbo, mindful that Su Wanli had missed dinner, deliberately set aside some food to send up as a late-night snack. What rotten luck. Su Wanli had just finished showering and was preparing to eat while scrolling through videos. Whether due to the sudden temperature drop, the ketchup he bought at the convenience store was stubbornly difficult to open. Fries without ketchup lacked soul, so he used the claw end of a hammer to pry it open. Applying too much force, he accidentally splattered himself with ketchup. To make matters worse, the bottle seemed expired. The sauce was thin, splashing like watery diarrhea onto his clothes, jeans, the table, and everywhere. Who could be in a good mood? Knock, knock, knock. Open up. What is it? Su Wanli opened the door irritably. His face dark, he held the hammer stained with ketchup, his gaze emotionless as he fixed his eyes on the men. The ketchup was indeed very thin, occasionally dripping from the hammer onto the floor. The man outside was, but as his gaze fell upon Su Wanli splattered with ketchup, his expression froze. This Looking down further, the stainless steel hammer, a symbol of his identity, was also stained with what appeared to be uncoagulated blood, its tip still dripping. Hiss! The man's heart trembled. He mentally hypnotized himself, insisting it couldn't be. No grudges, no enmity, who would casually kill for fun. Yet his gaze involuntarily drifted past Wanli, sneaking a peek into the dormitory. Noticing the two-person meal on the small table, red liquid splattered around, and no other person in sight. His legs suddenly went weak, threatening to give way. The man recalled the rumors about Wanli. 10 years. This guy had studied for 10 years. He's not normal. Now it seemed those weren't just rumors. State your business, Wanli urged. Feeling something cool on his foot, he looked down to see ketchup from the hammer dripping onto his shoe. His mood worsened, and he tore off a dozen tissues to wipe the hammer. Gulp! The man's throat involuntarily moved. He had already cast Wanli in the role of a murderous maniac. Now, watching Wanli wipe the hammer, he found the motion eerily practiced. Coupled with his expressionless face and emotionless gaze, the resemblance grew more uncanny. The corridor was cramped, crowded with people, and poorly ventilated. The blood from the earlier fight lingered in the air, the smell of gore refusing to dissipate. For a moment, the man couldn't distinguish whether the coppery scent emanated from the corridor or from the dormitory behind Wanli. No, it's nothing. Sorry to bother you. The man bowed apologetically, then turned and hurried away without looking back. The others were baffled, but seeing the man's pale face, trembling lips, and startled expression, and then Wanli wiping the hammer with tissues stained a vivid red, they immediately conjured up gruesome images of fights and murders. Time to leave. Swiftly, the group distanced themselves from Wanli's dormitory, returning to the hall to find spots on the floor to rest. How bizarre. Wanli muttered to himself. Closing the door, he stripped off his soiled clothes, tossed them into a bucket, and carried it to the bathroom for another shower, washing his clothes in the process. He didn't have many clothes, so he washed what he could. With the temperature dropping daily, he owned only 3 long-sleeve shirts, 2 of which wouldn't be returned until tomorrow morning. For now, he had to make do with short sleeves. Knock, knock, knock. Open up. A few skeptical men knocked on the dormitory door again. They refused to believe Wanli was committing murder inside. Holding a hammer makes him a murderer. Then wouldn't they be chainsaw killers for carrying chainsaws every day? Click. Wanli opened the iron door, one hand ready to slam it shut, the other gripping the hammer, his face dark as he glared at the men. What is it? The men's eyes widened. Wanli was bare-chested, revealing a physique with slight muscle definition. Not bulky, but well-built. But what horrified them wasn't the muscles, but the scars, bruises, knife wounds, several of them, like centipedes, clinging to his skin, writhing with each breath, grotesquely fierce. What do you want or not? Wanli's tone was sharp. Feeling a pang of insecurity, he instinctively tried to cover the scars. Some were from a car accident, others from work injuries. The car accident needed no elaboration. The work injuries stemmed from his lack of education, making it hard to find stable employment. He was often shuffled to whichever position was short-staffed. These positions required no technical skill, but often carried certain risks, like operating a shoe insole press, where a moment's inattention could cost a finger or even a hand. And nothing. The man stepped back, forcing a stiff smile onto his face. Brody, you need someone to warm your bed. Get lost. Wanli slammed the iron door shut in annoyance and scurried back to the bathroom to shower. He felt the temperature had dropped even further. This back and forth gave him the illusion of plunging into icy water. Phew. After showering, Wanli put on 2 short-sleeved shirts and a leather jacket, hung his washed underwear and thermal top on the balcony, then closed the balcony doors and windows before returning to his bed. Curling up, he turned on a video. He ate his hamburger and fries while watching a movie. At 10:30, he turned off the lights and went to sleep. Ding! Ding! It was a little past 1 in the morning. Wanli curled up on the bed, shivering from the cold. The phone on the pillow kept buzzing with message notifications, but he couldn't be bothered to reach for it. Yesterday, he had stored his down jacket and cotton quilt in the Hoarder Space. The only thermal underwear he had was now dirty, so he had to wash it, leaving him to sleep in nothing but a few summer t-shirts to keep warm. With the temperature plummeting to -10 degrees, a leather jacket with mediocre insulation and 3 or 4 t-shirts were nowhere near enough. He simply couldn't withstand the cold. Hoarder, can I take out the quilt and down jacket now? Ding, storage complete. You may retrieve them at any time. Retrieve. Wanli said without hesitation. He had timed his request precisely. He had stored them at a little past 5 in the morning, and now it was just past 1 in the morning. Exactly 20 hours, meeting the minimum requirement for quality return. Ding, retrieved items have been dispensed. Natural goose down jacket, 250g, fill weight, 550 fill power, warm, yet lightweight, better with a windproof outer layer. A drawback is that water greatly reduces insulation. Tibetan long staple cotton quilt, fine fabric, tasteful, living soft against the skin, suitable for temperatures around -5 degrees. Winter thermal jeans. Thermal underwear. Antibacterial boxer briefs. Nice. Su Wanli sprang up. He swiftly stripped off his leather jacket and t-shirts, replacing them with the newly returned thermal underwear. Instantly, a wave of soft, snug warmth enveloped him, driving the chill from his arms and torso. He flexed his stiff body a little before finally feeling alive again. Just need a snowsuit. Indoors, a thermal layer and a down jacket were enough. Outdoors, he would need a windproof snowsuit on top. The temperature would surely drop to tens of degrees below zero in the future. To stay warm and avoid freezing, he would need at least 3 layers, a thermal base layer, a down jacket in the middle, and a windproof, waterproof snowsuit on the outside. For now, Su Wanli had the thermal underwear and down jacket. All he lacked was the outer snowsuit. The quilt is good too, but a bit small, he mused. Su Wanli was a single man. All his bedding was for one person, a 1.5 by 12 meter quilt, a mattress, and one pillow. Originally, he had 2 pillows. But a worker he got along with at the factory said a single man didn't deserve 2 pillows and swiped the unused one, leaving him with just one. Finally, I can get a good night's sleep. The previous 2 nights had been spent on a bus. Confined to a seat and constantly on guard against monsters, he had barely slept. Tonight he had a dormitory, but there was no air conditioning, and the quilt and mattress had been taken by an employee. The temperature was several degrees below zero, making it impossible to sleep from the cold. Now, with the quilt and clothes returned by the hoarder, he could finally sleep peacefully. Clothes and quilt are sorted. Now what should I store next? Su Wanli lay in the warm bed pondering. The food he had bought in advance was left in the bus luggage compartment, and he hadn't had a chance to bring it out. He only had 6 raw eggs bought that morning, a claw hammer, and an unopened can of yellow peaches he had found rummaging through the dormitory that afternoon. The canned peaches could serve as food and the claw hammer as a weapon. Hoarder, how long will it take for the claw hammer to undergo quality return? Su Wanli didn't hesitate long before deciding to secure a better weapon for self-defense. There was still food at the fast food restaurant downstairs. The price didn't matter. But a weapon was different. A good, reliable weapon could multiply his combat effectiveness several times over, helping him deal with the monsters outside and increasing his chances of survival. Ding, detected. Stainless steel claw hammer, double return in 5 days. Quality return requires 10-fold or more. First time storage of self-defense weapon. Quality return time shortened by 100-fold. Store. This time, before Su Wanli could speak, the hoarder proactively informed him of the shortened return time. But Su Wanli couldn't quite feel happy about it. Last time, even when he argued that his life was in danger, the hoarder hadn't given him a shred of information. Now, without him saying a word, the hoarder voluntarily spoke up. Didn't this mean that his current situation was extremely dangerous? So dangerous that the hoarder was eager to stuff him with as many usable weapons as possible. Store. The claw hammer's quality return required at least 10-fold. Shortened by 100-fold, it meant he could retrieve it in 12 hours. 12 hours. Su Wanli took the phone from under his pillow and unlocked it to check the time. It was 1:42 a.m. By around 2 in the afternoon, he would have the quality returned claw hammer, just about the time for a nap after lunch. With the exact return time known, he turned off the screen and put the phone aside, then slipped the iron-studded belt under the pillow. The iron door looked sturdy, but the lock was actually easy to pick. He needed to stay alert. Click. The sound of the lock turning was especially clear in the dead of night. Su Wanli, who had just been drifting off to sleep, snapped his eyes open. Fury boiled within him as his hand reached for the iron-studded belt under the pillow. Weren't these people ever going to stop? But when he looked at the iron door, its silvery surface showed no sign of being unlocked. Not my room, he quickly realized. The soundproofing in these employee dorms was terrible. The breathing of the drivers resting in the corridor outside could be heard clearly inside the rooms, making it hard to pinpoint the source of sounds. The sound of the lock turning wasn't someone trying to break into his room. Instead, it was 2 sneaky figures using lockpicking tools to jimmy the door of the Luosifin restaurant owner's room next door. Who are you? Shut up. Slap. Keep your mouth shut. A commotion erupted from outside, punctuated by the crisp sound of a slap. Soon the noise drew the attention of other drivers in the corridor who were having trouble sleeping. They crowded around the door of the Luosifin shop owner's room, some even walking in to see what was happening. Su Wanli felt a bit helpless. These people really had no sense of occasion when it came to rubbernecking. The corridor was narrow, and suddenly a dozen or so people were gathered outside. They kept bumping into the iron door, and the constant sound of footsteps running back and forth shattered any hope of sleep. Still, Su Wanli didn't want to go out and invite trouble. At least until the hoarder returned his claw hammer, he couldn't afford to get into a conflict. Let me play some rain sounds for sleep. He pulled out his phone, opened his bookmarks on the video site, adjusted the volume, and played a track of rainfall. This kind of sound could relax the mind and body, effectively relieving stress. Su Wanli occasionally felt inexplicably irritable. Following advice from netizens, he would play some rain sounds to calm his emotions. Over time, it became a habit, and eventually his pre-sleep music Paired with other hypnotic videos, he almost never suffered from insomnia, and his sleep quality was excellent. For a noisy situation like this, listening to rain sounds was perfect for falling asleep. It was past 9 the next morning. Wanli woke up naturally, stretching his hand toward the phone on the bedside table. Checking his phone upon waking had long become a habit. But the moment his arm left the warmth of the blanket, a bone-piercing chill enveloped it. So cold. He grabbed the icy phone and pulled it back under the quilt, covering his head as he basked in the warmth, while a new group chat named Malay Mountain Service Area was flooding with messages. Over 99 unread. Changed the name. Wanli tapped into the group. This was the search group created by Yusahan. When he joined yesterday, there were only about 20 members. Now there were 136. It seemed nearly all the stranded drivers and passengers had joined. Renaming it to Malay Mountain Service Area carried another meaning: no more searching. The messages were no longer about finding people either. The latest official news about the zombies outside. A member with a sports car avatar shared a link. Zombie news. Wanli's heart stirred at the title. He reached out to tap the link. But the next second, a spinning wheel for a scam game popped up on the screen. Wanli was taken aback. Was someone pulling a prank at a time like this? Did they think it was funny? Just as he was about to type out a few curses, many others who had been tricked into clicking the link were already unleashing a torrent of abuse in the group. That person retorted with a few defiant words, but soon stopped sending messages, seemingly kicked out of the group. Without the jokers, the information flow became much more normal. I saw a message this morning. Apparently those monsters mutated after inhaling some unknown substance in the fog. They are ferocious and violent, attacking anyone on sight like wild beasts. They cannot be reasoned with, so don't think you can appeal to their humanity. Holy crap. So aren't we inhaling that virus in the fog too? It's not a virus, it's an unknown substance. We seem fine on the surface, but once attacked by a monster, the unknown substance inside us will assimilate and turn us into one of them. Isn't that just zombies? It's different. Zombies are caused by a virus. Monsters are from an unknown substance. Does it make any difference to us? Of course it does. Even if we aren't bitten, as we keep breathing in the unknown substance, we might still turn into monsters. So we're all doomed to become monsters sooner or later. A heavy silence fell over the chat. No one replied, as if they silently agreed. Yusahan, however, posted a new video link and typed out some information about the unknown substance. Spending too long outdoors or being injured by a monster attack increases the risk of assimilation. Otherwise, the chance of turning into a monster just by breathing is very slim. In fact, a certain amount of the unknown substance might even be beneficial to the body. Beneficial, eh? Wanli saw the message and immediately clicked the video link. This video was a bit strange. It wasn't a regular app video, but redirected to an unfamiliar website. It was very laggy, taking a while to load. A foreign video. In the video, a blue-eyed, pale-skinned foreigner in a white lab coat spoke. The background appeared to be a laboratory with several frenzied monsters tied up behind him. A few assistants, also in white coats, were conducting various experiments on the monsters. The opening alone had the atmosphere of an apocalyptic movie. Unfortunately, there were no subtitles or translation. Wanli couldn't understand a word. But seeing those tightly bound monsters in the lab, he realized that the hidden strength of various nations was not to be underestimated. Monsters posed a huge threat to ordinary people, but they seemed insignificant against national power. In just 2 days, monsters had been captured alive for research. Indeed, in the face of a global catastrophe, the technological might displayed by different countries could surely bring hope to the survivors. Are those tied-up people the monsters? They don't look so tough. Classic, you could do better. Can anyone tell us what the guy in the video is saying? Basically, they extracted blood samples from the monsters, successfully isolated the unknown substance, and are studying its composition and effects. So far, their lab has concluded that the unknown substance can strengthen the body. Strengthen the body. Can it enhance specific parts? Wanli knew right away that the person asking about specific body parts was that man from the pickled vegetable country. How that guy had really been shaken. Everyone quiet down for a moment. Yusahan activated the group mute function. Instead of typing, she sent several voice messages and uploaded a few more foreign videos. This video is from the dark web, so its authority is questionable. But just now, the military of a certain curry country uploaded their latest experiment video. Using live animals as bait, they conducted multiple indoor experiments. The result was that the monsters did not charge indoors to attack. They could only move in areas with dense fog. This means that as long as we don't go outside and stay quietly in the hall, we'll be safe. Also around 8 this morning, netizens from several regions posted videos of soldiers rescuing trapped people. 2 pieces of good news: monsters don't enter buildings, and the military is taking action. At that moment, Yusahan's soft, gentle voice was like honey to everyone's hearts, making them want to pin her against the wall and kiss her fiercely. Can't enter buildings. Unlike the others' joy, Wanli shook his head inwardly. That Curry country always had a puzzling confidence. He didn't fully trust the monster information released by that country. Yesterday afternoon, the monster stepping onto the steps was a sign. Wanli believed that the monster's inability to enter buildings was only temporary. As time passed, and the unknown substance in the air grew denser, once it reached a certain threshold, those monsters would break into buildings to hunt. Moreover, he noticed that the monsters were appearing earlier each day. Midnight past 6 in the evening, past 4 in the afternoon. Wanli decided to observe for one more day. If the monsters appeared even earlier today, it would mean they were adapting to the daytime environment and would soon be able to move freely in daylight. He would then have to hurry back to the bus to retrieve supplies or look for another way out in the city. Brothers and sisters, you must all be hungry after not eating all day, right? Since monsters can't come indoors, our fast food joint will fire up the stove soon. Everyone is welcome. Supplies are limited, first come first served. After Yu Sahan sent the message, she lifted the mute. Liang Yukai seized the moment to copy and paste his prepared advertisement into the group promoting their fast food business. He had done his research last night. The breakfast shop, burger joint, and snail noodle place were all closed, claiming to be sold out. And with the news that the military was rescuing people, everyone would be saved sooner or later. This was the perfect chance for the fast food restaurant to make a killing. No one had ever doubted the power of the military. Brother Kai, are we really firing up the stove? Inside the fast food kitchen, the chef stood hesitantly at the... Despite online rumors that those monsters wouldn't enter buildings, he still feared the loud sizzling of cooking would lure the creatures outside in. If that happens, we won't earn a cent and might even lose our lives. Oh wait, what do you think? Should we open for business? Liang Yukai tossed the question to Brother Fire Snake. He was indeed eager to rake in a fortune while the opportunity arose, but it involved everyone's safety. A single misstep could spark conflict, even bloodshed. This kind of decision required input from the enforcers on the front line. Well, Brother Fire Snake fidgeted awkwardly. Ordinarily he'd snap at anyone who displeased him. But when faced with an insurmountable problem, he remembered he was still just a kid. I understand. Seeing this, Liang Yukai patted Brother Fire Snake on the shoulder and sighed inwardly. Yesterday afternoon, everyone had witnessed monsters attacking humans and were thoroughly terrified. A few online posts weren't enough to quell their deep-seated fears. They needed more time or more authoritative proof. Brother Kai, don't worry. Feeling a bit embarrassed, Brother Fire Snake thumped his chest and declared with righteous fervor, since the fast food joint isn't open today, we won't take any pay. Liang Yukai cursed inwardly. Expecting wages without working. Did they think his money grew on? But for now, he couldn't afford to alienate Brother Fire Snake and his crew. Waving his hand dismissively, he pulled out 2 packs of cigarettes and handed them around. I'm not the type to shortchange anyone. You'll get every cent when the time comes. Here, have a smoke. Thanks, Brother Kai. Brother Fire Snake was deeply moved. What's the hardest thing in the world? Getting money from a rich man. But Brother Kai treated them well. Rest assured, Brother Kai, when the joint opens, anyone who causes trouble will have to answer to us. Your business won't be disturbed. Good. That's the spirit. The group lit up their cigarettes and chatted in hushed tones. Liang Yukai pulled out his phone and began composing a message. Before he could finish, a notification popped up. Boss Liang, save me a tummy tuveg combo. They'll come down to eat in 10 minutes. The message was from Su. Liang Yukai paused mid-typing upon seeing Wanli's message. Something wasn't right. Last night, the fight upstairs had caused a huge ruckus without attracting the monsters outside. Had even heard that a deranged woman tried to open the glass door, managing to create a gap, yet no monsters attacked. So why would frying a few dishes in the kitchen lure them in? Slap. Liang Yukai smacked his forehead and muttered to himself. I've been scared witless by those monsters. He deleted the half-finished message, stood up, and looked at Brother Fire Snake and the chef with renewed vigor. We're opening for business as usual today. Huh. Brother Fire Snake and the others were taken aback. Suddenly their cigarettes didn't taste so good. Hadn't they just decided not to open? What changed? Brother Kai. Don't worry. Liang Yukai cut him off. He looked at them and asked, you all know about the fight upstairs last night, right? Of course. Those 2 idiots were screaming like banshees, nearly scared the piss out of me. Don't even get me started. It's not like they lost a limb. Just a couple of punches, and they were howling loud enough to be heard a mile away. The group grumbled indignantly. Last night, unable to sleep from the cold, they gathered in the kitchen to drink some wine and chat about Lin Xiaoling, the pretty co-ed Gurejia, the petite young wife, and other attractive women in the hall to keep warm. Just as they were getting into the swing of things, heavy footsteps sounded outside. Before they could figure out what was happening, shouts and pleas erupted from upstairs. Scared sober, they cowered in a corner, not daring to make a sound. Only at dawn, when voices from the hall indicated people were moving about, did they finally roll up the shutter door and ask what had happened. Upon learning of Bai Jiadong's foolishness, they were furious. If Liang Yukai hadn't told them to avoid trouble, they'd have given Bai Jiadong a beating long ago. The commotion upstairs was pretty loud, wasn't it? Liang Yukai coaxed them. Did any monsters get in? No. So do you think frying some food will attract the monsters outside? Realization dawned on Brother Fire Snake. His boss was determined to make money. This boss would risk his life for cash. He didn't know how to dissuade him. After all, he couldn't take the boss money and then refuse to let him do business, could he? All right, Brother Kai, if you say we open, we open. Brother Fire Snake gritted his teeth and agreed. His heart was full of reluctance. 200 a day wasn't worth dying for. But had just sworn to protect the business. If he backed out now, they'd lose not just the 200 a day, but also the free meals, cigarettes, and booze. Given Liang Yukai's greed, if they refused, it would end badly. He'd just find other muscle to watch the place and keep running his business. Then they'd have to pay for their own meals. Brother Fire Snake and his crew didn't even have 10,000 yuan between them. They couldn't afford the exorbitant food costs. Better to just go along with it. So we're really cooking. The chef exchanged a glance with the two servers, their faces showing resignation. Then, boss, how many portions should we prepare? 100. A wild glint shone in Liang Yukai. He was rushing to open because the authorities had officially announced the deployment of troops. Malay Mountain Service Area was remote, but it was still a stop on the Guangdong-Guangxi Expressway. Rescue soldiers might pass through or arrive, distributing disaster relief supplies and cutting into his profits. Liang Yukai had to cash in fast. Once the soldiers arrived, his chance would be gone. 100 portions. The chef hesitated. Having worked at the fast food joint for years, he knew the inventory inside out. At 100 portions, they'd only last 3 or 4 days. What would they eat after selling it all? Don't worry. Sensing their concerns, Liang Yukai smiled, reassuring. I've set aside enough for us to last several days. We won't sell everything. All right then. With the boss' assurance, the chef and servers stopped dawdling and headed to the kitchen to prep the ingredients. Within half an hour, the sealed-off hall was filled with the enticing aroma of food. Smells great. The travelers in the hall hadn't slept all night and hadn't eaten dinner yesterday. Now cold, hungry, and exhausted. The scent of food triggered intense pangs of hunger. They all turned to look at the fast food joint where steam was rising. Freshly cooked braised pork belly with vermicelli. Liang Yukai announced in a moderate voice, casually placing the newly adjusted price list in a prominent spot. He didn't forget to remind everyone. Limited supply, first come, first served. Hearing this, the famished travelers rose to their feet. Pulling their coats tight and tucking their hands under their armpits, they shuffled shivering toward the fast food joint. The cold accelerated their body's calorie burn. After a night of enduring in thin clothing, they were weak and numb, craving only something hot to replenish their energy. But the prices on the blackboard made their jaws drop. 500 for 1 meat and 1 veg. Are you out of your mind? $50 for an extra serving of rice. Is your rice laced with gold? Damn it. The crowd erupted in curses. In this freezing weather, paying 50 for a hot meal might be grudgingly accepted, but 500 for 1 meat and 1 veg. Did he think they were walking ATMs? Was this business? This was robbery. Everyone please calm down. Liang Yukai spoke with a smile. In business, it's all about mutual consent. We don't want to raise prices. But our supplies are limited. By raising prices a bit, we ensure no one wastes food. Right? He wasn't worried they wouldn't buy. No one knew when the soldiers would arrive. But the food in his shop was his to control. If he said supplies were low, then supplies were low. If they didn't buy now, they might not get the chance later. Let's see who blinked. In the second-floor dormitory, Wanli put down his phone after tagging Liang Yukai and got up to wash up. Originally, he had planned not to go out until the hoarding hamster returned the claw hammer. However, the 2 pieces of news from Yusihan had calmed everyone's volatile emotions considerably. With soldiers on their way and rescue imminent, people's inner sense of morality and legal awareness began to regain their proper restraint. They were no longer likely to harm others easily, and some even proposed returning their dormitory leases to recover a bit of their hard-earned money. Wanli hesitated for a moment, then decided to swap his down jacket for a stab-resistant leather jacket. Although most people had returned to a rational state, many had committed unlawful acts the night before. To guard against those who might abandon all restraint, an extra layer of protection was necessary. With a creak, he opened the iron door. From the neighboring dormitory of the Snail Noodle Shop, a woman with a haggard face walked out. Her eyes were red, a slap mark visible on her cheek, and her clothes and hair were slightly disheveled. Noticing Wanli's gaze, she instinctively covered her face and collar, lowering her head as she headed toward the communal bathroom. Wanli frowned. That woman was the one who had posted in the group yesterday searching for her boyfriend, the elegant young woman. Later, she had seen her boyfriend turn into a monster and had wept in a corner of the hall. At the time, everyone's attention was fixed on the monsters outside, though no one paid her any heed. He hadn't expected her to be renting the adjacent dorm. And in her current state, she had likely just endured something terrible. Had the door that was forced open last night belonged to the Snail Noodle Shop's dormitory? Someone had pried open a lock last night, causing quite a commotion. Initially, Su Wanli thought it was the burger shop's dormitory across the way, but now peering through the door crack, he realized it was the neighboring snail noodle dorm. In a space less than 15 square meters, over a dozen people were crammed. Nearly 10 people lay sideways on the 2 single-sized bunk beds with 2 or 3 squeezed onto each bed. On the floor between the bunks, 6 or 7 people were curled up resting, while the lower bunk on the right, occupied by only one man, stood out conspicuously. That fellow was not tall, but was dark and sturdy, clearly someone accustomed to physical labor. As if sensing something, he lifted his head. Seeing Su Wanli outside the door, his gaze instinctively flickered away. But soon he calmed down, turned over, and continued watching a foreign language video on his phone, studying with intense focus. Su Wanli silently noted the man's appearance before turning to head downstairs for a meal. That fellow had a certain ruthlessness about him. He needed to be cautious. But this guy probably didn't yet know about the soldiers being dispatched for rescue, otherwise he wouldn't be studying so calmly. Had that woman been tied up? Upon reaching the first floor, Su Wanli saw a woman tightly bound in a corner of the hall. Bottles and jars were also placed in front of the glass door barriers. He couldn't help but feel puzzled. In fact, no one had been able to sleep last night, so the group had discussed the woman's attempt to open the door at length, debating how to prevent such incidents. No one believed her claim of hearing sounds, because when she opened the door, no one else present had heard anyone talking outside. Su Wanli grabbed someone at random and asked, why is she tied up? Having received a quality refunded quilt last night, he had slept warmly and comfortably, unaware of what the woman had done. The morning group messages were too numerous to scroll through. The person he grabbed was quite surprised. You don't know? Then, like a chatterbox, he recounted what the woman had done. Sounds. Su Wanli noted it silently. After thanking him, he turned and walked toward the fast food restaurant. Brother Su, you're here. Liang Yukai's enthusiastic greeting came from a distance. Su Wanli looked up. At 1.78 meters tall, he was among the taller ones of his generation, and he quickly spotted Liang Yukai at the entrance of the fast food restaurant. Seeing him look over, the other man stood on tiptoe, waving through the crowd. Come quick. What's going on? Su Wanli surveyed the 100 or so people gathered around the restaurant. Why were these people standing outside without eating? Could inhaling a few more mouthfuls of aroma fill their stomachs? Just a little price hike, Liang Yukai said casually. Su Wanli didn't believe it. Pushing through the crowd, his eyes fell on the price list on the blackboard, and he couldn't help but exclaim inwardly. You call this a little hike? Yesterday, it was 50, today, it's 500. A full 10-fold increase. No wonder no one wanted to eat. If he hadn't known about the impending Great Ice Age, Su Wanli would have been reluctant to spend 500 on the cheapest fast food. Especially after just hearing that soldiers were about to arrive, he would rather endure 2 meals of hunger and tighten his belt than be taken for a fool. Liang Yukai laughed it off. Haha, got to make a living, you know. He warmly invited Su Wanli to sit inside. He was desperate for a customer to lead the way. Once someone was willing to pay, business would gradually pick up. Come on and sit down. All freshly cooked dishes. Can't afford it. Su Wanli shook his head. It wasn't that he begrudged the money. In truth, whether it was 500 or 5,000 a serving made little difference to him. But this wasn't the time to spend. If he stepped up to buy now, he would become a target of everyone's resentment, seen as an accomplice supporting the price hike. And an accomplice is often more hated than the culprit. Liang Yukai winked. Come on, brother Su, don't be so distant. But he couldn't wake someone who was pretending to sleep. Now he was genuinely anxious. If Su Wanli didn't come to the store, no one else would ever pay up. If you can't afford it, move aside. Don't block the way. Gu Ruijia, passing by Su Wanli, fanned her nose with a look of disdain. Ignoring Su Wanli, she lifted her chin toward Liang Yukai. Are you the boss? Yes, I'm the fast food restaurant owner. Can I place an order here? Order. Yes, of course. 3 meals a day, 8 in the morning, 12:30 at noon, and 6 in the evening. Deliver them to the second to last dorm on the right on the 2nd floor. Any problem? No problem. Liang Yukai was overjoyed. He remembered these two well. Last night he had even complained to Brother Huasha about Gu Ruijia's rich bitch attitude. But now Gu Ruijia was his golden goose. I've transferred the money. Gu Ruijia opened her handbag and took out her phone to scan the code. Soon the cash register announced the arrival of the payment. Payment received 20,000 yuan. Gu Ruijia put away her phone and said calmly, this is a deposit. If it's not enough, well, add more. But make sure to deliver on time. Understand? Understood. Liang Yukai agreed with a grin. He watched the two of them walk upstairs until their figures disappeared, then turned to Su Wanli with a smug expression. Brother Su, should I deliver your portion to your floor? Fine. Su Wanli nodded. Since he wasn't the one sticking his neck out, there was no need to hold back. He took out his phone and scanned the code to transfer the money. Send 2 portions and add me as a friend. He'll message you for future orders. Sure. Liang Yukai was in high spirits. But his attitude towards Su Wanli was less enthusiastic than before. A businessman, after all, cares about mutual benefit. If someone couldn't bring him profit, there was no need to maintain the relationship. Some people are just pathetic. Buying a few hundred yuan meals without a second thought, they deserve to be leeched. As Wanli was about to turn and head back upstairs, he heard a sarcastic voice. He looked over. Lin Xiaoling was being muffled by her boyfriend. Xiao Hao with an apologetic expression explained to Wanli and the surrounding people who wanted to buy food, "Sorry, I was just placing an order with Boss Liang. She was talking about me." As he spoke, he raised his phone. The screen showed his chat history with Liang Youcai, an order for 10 set meals, each with 1 meat and 1 vegetable dish, and a transfer of 5,000 yuan. 10 set meals, 1 for each of the 7 men, and the remaining 3 split among the 6 women. Wanli smiled and shook his head, then turned back to his dorm. It takes 2 years to learn to speak, but a lifetime to learn when to shut up. People with such a sharp tongue would likely get disciplined even in a well-ordered society. Now, with order not yet stable, opening one's mouth to offend a group would eventually lead to harsh lessons delivered in brutal ways. As for Lin Xiaoling, Wanli felt a sense of utter indifference. The woman had a decent figure and looks, but he couldn't muster the slightest interest. To put it bluntly, even if she stood naked before him, he wouldn't spare her a second glance. For someone like her, gazing at her body would only make her feel more attractive. It would be like rewarding her. Far less interesting than Guru Ajia. Guru Ajia was a woman proud to the bone. Breaking down that pride bit by bit would be a truly enjoyable. "Why didn't you let me speak?" After Wanli left, Lin Xiaoling forcefully broke free from her boyfriend's grasp, her face full of displeasure. She was only speaking the truth. There were over 100 people in the hall, and no one was buying food from the fast food restaurant. Wasn't Wanli who was willing to buy it, just a fool to be exploited? As for Guru Ajia, who had placed the first order, in Lin Xiaoling's subconscious, Guru Ajia represented the epitome of wealth. Did the wealthy need a reason to spend? Did they need to look at the price? No. Wanli was an ordinary person from the bottom rung, someone she looked down upon. That someone like him would buy food she herself couldn't afford naturally infuriated her. She wanted to mock him, to elevate herself by belittling him. But her boyfriend stopped her. Not only that, but he also frantically placed an order for 10 portions. Wasn't that just caving in? Suddenly, Lin Xiaoling felt a shred of contempt for her boyfriend, a rich second-generation heir. He became timid at the slightest trouble, lacking the charisma he showed on campus, failing to live up to his sweet promises, and even groveling before a wage worker. She began to wonder if choosing Xiao Hao was the right decision. Why do you have to talk about him like that? Xiao Hao, he didn't know what his girlfriend was thinking, nor did he want to guess. The past 2 days had left him mentally and physically. First, they were trapped in the service area with temperatures dropping and thick fog refusing to dissipate. Then classmates mysteriously disappeared, the convenience store was ransacked, and then monsters appeared. One irrational event after another weighed heavily on him, making it hard to breathe. Xiao Hao was the one who initiated this holiday trip. He couldn't just give up. He had to calm his classmates, find them accommodation, and order food. He had to keep up with almost everything. This deeply exhausted him, a rich second-generation heir who had never stepped into society and had always been pampered. If it weren't for Sahan and their small group, he would have long since given up. In fact, many of the ideas came, for example, purchasing supplies in advance and pooling money to rent the breakfast shop staff dormitory, were decisions that showed foresight. Xiao Hao was responsible for execution and communication. Their cooperation managed to stabilize everyone's emotions as well as Xiao Hao's own. But at a time like this, his girlfriend had to stir up trouble for no reason. Xiao Hao really couldn't take it anymore. But it's true. Lin Xiaoling also felt it wasn't right deep down. However, she believed the problem wasn't Wanli, but her boyfriend's attitude. As her boyfriend, he should have taken her side, not blamed her. This stirred her rebellious nature. She refused to back down. "Xiaoling, don't gossip about others anymore," Sahan reminded her in a gentle tone. "What are you all doing?" Being scolded by both her boyfriend and her best friend simultaneously made Lin Xiaoling feel terribly wronged. Her eyes reddened and her voice choked with tears. "Fine, I was wrong, okay." With that, she turned and stomped upstairs. "Leave her be." Xiao Hao also lost his temper. There were some things he could concede on, but others he could not. They didn't know when the military would arrive, but even before the disaster, one shouldn't casually boss others around. It not only risked offending people, but also appeared ill-mannered. Most importantly, the experiences of the past 2 days made Xiao Hao deeply realize the importance of a capable partner. He felt that Lin Xiaoling might be a suitable girlfriend able to satisfy his various male whims, but she was far from being a qualified wife. On the contrary, Sahan appeared even more perfect in comparison. She was decisive, had foresight, and was resolute. "Haha, everyone, don't rush, don't rush." Liang Youcai was beaming as he maintained order. With Guru Ajia taking the lead, many drivers and passengers with decent finances or savings came forward to spend, almost scrambling for fear that if they were slow they would miss out on the food. This delighted him immensely. "Sister Wang, come with me for a moment." After instructing his 2 underlings to take over serving, Liang Youcai called the 2 kitchen ladies to the back and secretly told them to reduce a meal meant for 100 people into one for 200. The price remained unchanged. That way he could earn over 100,000 yuan in a single day. Tomorrow, citing a sharp decrease in food supplies, he could raise the prices and earn several 100,000 a day. If he could keep this up for a day or two, he would become a millionaire. For 3 or 4 days, he would have several million. If he continued until all the restaurant stock was sold, his wealth would reach tens of millions, and he would live a carefree life from then on. Wasn't early retirement the dream of every worker? He could already see the dawn of its realization. Hey, you haven't paid yet. I don't have money. Then why are you getting food? I'm hungry. Just as Liang Yukai was fantasizing about his future bliss, a quarrel broke out between one of his underlings and a customer. He immediately walked out of the kitchen. In front of the glass counter, an old man in his 70s had somehow slipped into the shop. Ignoring the tugging of Fire Snake's underling, he grabbed a plate of braised pork belly with vermicelli and kept shoving it into his mouth, even reaching for other hot dishes under the counter. This sight struck Liang Yukai like a thunderbolt. His eyes bulged as he pointed at the old man and roared, "Drag him out of here." Murder. Before Fire Snake's underling could act, the old man skillfully collapsed to the ground, letting out a people outside, unaware of the situation, heard the scream and saw the old man writhing on the floor. They couldn't help but imagine a scene of bullying or exploiting the weak. How could you? To be so ruthless to an old man, don't you have elders in your family? Profiteering without any morals. Selling the cheapest meal for 500 yuan. Can someone like that have any morals? No wonder. The onlookers shouted accusations. Some knew what had happened, others didn't. But that didn't stop them from verbally attacking Liang Youcai, venting their anger at being taken advantage of. No one cared about Liang Yukai's predicament or feelings. For those who maliciously jacked up prices, they were only too happy to see him suffer. We didn't hit him, Liang Yukai tried to explain. But the customers outside all wore expressions of enjoying the chaos, paying no attention to what he said. Damn it. Liang Yukai felt deeply aggrieved. He took a few deep breaths to forcibly calm himself down. For now, he couldn't let things escalate. He had to deal with the old man, first clean up the contaminated food, give the onlookers an explanation, and then think about the rest. But backing down. Impossible. You just wait. Liang Yukai glared viciously at the old man. Then he walked to the glass counter, picked up the 2 plates the old man had touched, and in front of everyone dumped them into the kitchen's food waste bin. Still feeling unsatisfied, he took down the small blackboard and rewrote the prices. 1 meat dish and 1 vegetable dish for 1,000 yuan. The fury of the onlookers was fully ignited. This act of dumping food was different from the first time. The first time Liang Yukai dumped leftovers, everyone still had instant noodles, self-heating hot pots, and other supplies in their cars. They didn't care if he dumped the food, even if they disapproved. But now no one could leave, and there was no telling when rescue would arrive. During this period, the fast food restaurants' meals were the only food available. They were already willing to pay 500 yuan for a meal, yet Liang Yukai still dumped the food. Worse, he blatantly passed the loss on to them. How was that any different from humiliating them outright?